Chapter 1027. On the other hand, Sergio was also stuttering and stammering. It was obvious that he didn't know what he was asking either. But he still asked bravely, "My boss asked me to ask Elder Juan. Does this mean that our good days are coming? Yes, it's this." Juan Minqing's expression became serious. "Why didn't your boss come and ask himself? And he didn't send anyone else but you too?" Rock Four Ears and Sergio looked at each other. This question is so profound. We don't know anything either. Anyway, we were sent here without knowing anything. Juan Minqing's face darkened. "Looks like your boss is afraid of being scolded. So he sent you two who don't know anything." The two of them didn't know what was going on, but they felt that it was awesome. "What you said was so profound. We don't understand. I've told them not to ask about such things. How is it a good thing? This is a tribulation, do you understand?" Juan Minqing was exasperated. "I just won't listen, I won't listen." Sergio and Rock Four Ears were even more confused and a little scared. They felt as if they had been thrown into a pit by their boss. Because the old man in front of them was the strongest in this huge forest. It was just that his temper was good, so good that everyone ignored it. But once he got angry, it was already a catastrophe. What else did he say? Rock Four Ears thought hard. Boss also said. Suddenly he stammered and couldn't say anything. His eyes were lost. Then, he patted his head and took out a crumpled piece of paper from his space ring. He opened it and read, "Fire Shaman Scripture, a Great Era." Juan Minqing sighed sadly and waved his hand. "No need to read it." His expression was a little sad. "Fire Shaman Scripture appears in the ninth heaven. A catastrophe is coming. A great era descends and the heavens mourn. How many hearts of the saint can change with a single thought? A great era. How can it be so easy to get through?" He sighed softly, and his expression was sorrowful. Then he suddenly froze. He abruptly turned his head and looked at the small house that Swishaodua was in. He was surprised and bewildered. "Elder Juan, you?" Fourth Rock's eyes were filled with worry as he asked. "I'm fine." Juan Minqing came back to his senses, but he still seemed to be distracted and in a daze. After half a minute, he finally sighed softly and said, "Go back and tell your boss that even if the great era comes, it is not something they can touch. Everyone has been living in the Wu people's territory for so many years. It is already a great fortune that we have not been destroyed. There is no need to ask for more. If the great era comes and you still want to do something, you must be prepared to bear the brunt of it and turn into ashes. Trash like you who have been staying here for a long time may not be able to survive if you act rashly. In the face of a life and death crisis, no one will care about the alliance of the past. Therefore, it's better to be honest. If you don't do anything, there might be a slight possibility that you can preserve a little bit of your vitality in the Great Tribulation. But if you want to do something," Juan Minqing smiled coldly and said, "that is, the disaster of extinction is not far away." Rock Four and Sergio did not fully understand, but the two of them did their best to memorize everything that Juan Shengming had said, as well as his expression and tone of voice, without missing a single detail. This almost made the two of them die of exhaustion. One must know that they used their soul strength and origin strength to memorize everything to ensure that there was no mistake. Because their boss had said that they must not miss anything, and that they must repeat everything. Otherwise, they would directly swallow it. With their lives at stake, how could the two of them dare to be negligent? Listening to Juan Minqing's words, the two of them did not even dare to ask questions. They just repeated it over and over again. Then, Fourth Rock took out a piece of paper from his ring and handed it to Juan Minqing. Juan Minqing felt more and more helpless. He said coldly, "The more you use, the thinner the friendship becomes. Go back and tell your boss that this is the last time." Yes, I will definitely pass it on." Fourth Rock nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. After reading the paper, Juan Minqing said indifferently, "You're right. Great tribulations are often caused by fire. The first heavenly tribulation was caused by heavenly fire descending upon the mortal world, causing the heavenly tribulation. The second Qilan tribulation was caused by the prosperity of the Wu people. The third was caused by the fire wizard Zhu Rong. The fourth, In short, all tribulations have their own cause and effect. This is the fundamental reason why no one dares to truly exterminate the fire wizard. And after a few great tribulations until now, do you know what kind of tribulations they are? The demon and demon shook their heads at the same time, their faces filled with confusion. Wanmenshing was about to speak, but the moment he opened his mouth, his expression suddenly changed. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. It was an extremely terrifying sight. After a while, Wanmenshing took a deep breath and stood up with difficulty. He coughed and spat out a pool of bright red blood. The entire ground was instantly dyed red by the blood that sprayed out. It dyed the ground within a 2-meter radius red. As this mouthful of blood was spat out, an extremely dense life force rose from the blood light and instantly enveloped the entire forest. With this mouthful of blood as the epicenter, the surrounding trees and bushes of an unknown distance suddenly grew in a circle with a hua-la-la sound. If one happened to look down from high up in the sky at this time, one would see that the borders of the entire forest had expanded by several dozen miles. Moreover, it was expanding in every direction at an extremely rapid pace. This sudden increase in area was simply terrifying. However, tracing back to the source, Wanmenshing's mouthful of blood had caused the entire forest to expand by a large circle. Such a density of life force was truly terrifying to the extreme. The act of spitting out blood itself gave the demon and demon, as well as Wuxia, who was in the house, a fright. It can't be. Wanmenshing shook his head regretfully. He muttered, I wanted to use this opportunity to tell you some things, but the heavens won't allow it. What can I do? His eyes swept across the window of the small house regretfully. Wuxia couldn't help but shudder. This is for me? Anyway, it's definitely not for the demon and demon, because these 2 idiots definitely wouldn't understand. It's useless to tell them. Then it's most likely for me. You can go back. Wanmenshing's usually rosy face turned pale. He took a few deep breaths and slowly regained his composure. He said, Tell your 2 bosses what to do. I've already made it very clear. If they're willing to listen, they'll never leave the forest for the rest of their lives. If they don't listen, then when they decide to leave the forest one day, they'll have to be prepared. Once they step out of this forest, they'll never return for the rest of their lives. Because if they return, they'll turn this last piece of peaceful land into a monstrous battlefield. They'll turn this peaceful land into ashes. Wanmenshing's face was pale, but his voice was stern. As for the prophecy, I advise them not to worry about it. Even if the demon and demon race really return, when those who drifted out see you again, it's still uncertain whether they'll acknowledge your identities. Be careful. Roquefort's and Sergio's ignorance had already become a habit. Although they nodded repeatedly, no one expected them to really understand. It was probably because the 2 of them were scared out of their wits when they saw Wanmenshing vomiting blood. Now they could only nod instinctively. This guardian of the forest, the source of life in the forest, the ancestor revered by thousands of creatures, suddenly vomited blood after being asked a few questions that this responsibility was not something the 2 of them could bear. Elder Wan, please take care. We won't say anything else. We'll leave now, leave now. The demon and the demon hurriedly stood up as if their buttocks were on fire. Remember to pass my words back without missing a word. Wanmenshing coughed and said tiredly, You 2 go. The monster and the devil quickly turned around and left. After they walked out, they saw the 2 fellows who were like fire and water huddled together, reciting each other's words in a low voice. They were like 2 children checking each other's recitations before the teacher checked on them. Although she looked very ugly, she actually looked a little cute based on her current behavior. Wanmenshing watched the 2 fellows leave, his body swaying a little. He sighed softly, bent his body, and staggered to Wuxia's door. He said softly, as if he was talking to himself. You heard it, right? Wuxia pushed the door open and said, Elder Wan, some of your words were specially said to me. Of course I have to remember it. Wanmenshing nodded, as if he wanted to say something, but he didn't. After thinking for a long time, he finally asked, You just said that your name is Wuxia? Yes, I'm Zhuoxiaoduo. Zhuoxiaoduo nodded. Well, how much is a lot? Wan Minqing asked curiously. Yes, how much is a lot? Zhuoxiaoduo wanted to say too much, but after thinking about it, he didn't say it. Extra. My parents were just joking with me. How am I extra? How am I extra? The entire Zhuo family is counting on me to carry on the family line. Sister Nian, can she give birth to a child alone? It's all because I've exhausted all my strength. Excellent name. Wan Minqing smiled kindly and said, You can cultivate in this room. When you feel ready, come out and find me. I'll wait for you. Okay. Zhuoxiaoduo agreed without hesitation. Vaguely it seemed that Wan Minqing's attitude towards him had changed a little, but he couldn't tell why. Wan Minqing turned and left. However, the vitality in the room suddenly became stronger. Zhuoxiaoduo thought for a while, and took out the phone to test again. There was still no signal. The phone could only be used as a clock. He sighed, and threw it into the space ring. How annoying. Chapter 1028. Forget it. I'd better concentrate on my cultivation, and master the Zhu Rong primordial fire as soon as possible. After all, the most important thing is to quickly cultivate and absorb the primordial fire before I can leave. Looking at old man Wan's expression, it seemed to be different from before. There was something wrong with it. Previously, I didn't have the ability to absorb the primordial fire, so you wouldn't give me the primordial fire inheritance. But now, even if I successfully cultivate the Zhu Rong primordial fire, you still won't let me leave before I finish absorbing the primordial fire. This action was simply contradictory. You've already confirmed that I'm the real descendant of the Zhu Rong, and my identity can't be fake. But that even if you're thinking for me, you're afraid that I'll rashly use the primordial fire and end up burning myself, unable to save myself. But with the cultivation and knowledge he's shown before, and even said that he has a thorough understanding of the primordial fire, he could have directly given me the primordial fire inheritance sealed away and let me deal with it myself. Wouldn't that have ended this karma? But he chose the most tedious way to solve it. He wants me to cultivate the Zhu Rong primordial fire to the point that I can absorb the primordial fire inheritance. But to complete all of this, it's not something that can be done in a day. If I'm not careful, it'll take a long time. What I lack the most now is time. It's been many days since I went missing. I'm afraid that the other side has already discovered that I'm missing. But the current situation is that I can't leave before I finish absorbing the primordial fire inheritance. Zhuoxiaoduo was extremely anxious. It was not that he had to leave. As long as he could send a message outside, it would be fine. However, there was no signal at all. Previously, when he saw Roxy Air's attire, Zhuoxiaoduo had some hope. This demon was dressed like this, and his words revealed that he had been to the Wu people recently. This meant that this realm wasn't completely isolated from the outside world. That was why he tried to use his phone to contact him. However, he didn't know if this realm was too far away from the Wu people, and there was no signal, or if this realm was in the private area of the people's lives, and the signal couldn't enter, just like the sky-destroying tower. In short, there was no way to contact the outside world. He didn't know how worried Nian Mao, Li Qinglong, Long Yusheng, and Wen Xingtian were right now. He also didn't know if his disappearance would cause any changes. He just hoped that everything was fine. There shouldn't be so many changes at the beginning of the year. Zhuoxiaoduo kept repeating in her heart, I'm safe, I'm safe. She was very sincere, hoping that Nian Nian Cat would receive her telepathy. However, he also knew that this was simply wishful thinking. They wouldn't know. Zhuoxiaoduo was still in a daze as he sorted out the information he obtained from the three of them. He was no more clear-headed than the demon and the demon. However, he still understood one thing. It seemed like a calamity was about to happen. The races and continents that had split off were all going to return, not just the demon clan. After that, was there going to be another calamity of the world, and a calamity of the people? Zhuoxiaoduo kept repeating in her heart. The fire wizard scripture has appeared in the sky. A calamity is about to happen. A great era is coming and the heavens are mourning. How many people's hearts are affected by a single thought? This prophecy is quite clear. Looks like my identity as the fire wizard's successor is unquestionable. The fire wizard's last miracle sent me here. This kind of heaven-shaking phenomenon is a sign that a great era is about to begin, and it was written in the prophecy long ago. The people's lives started the first calamity of the world, witnessed the second calamity, and even participated in the opening of the calamity. I'm indeed the chosen one, the one with great luck. However, if that's the case, then it proves one thing even more, and that is, the Great Tribulation is really not far away. As the signs appear and the curtains are pulled back, it's just a buffer period of 2 to 3 years. If all the races return in the next 2 to 3 years, many legendary figures will appear. With my current cultivation, I'm like an ant. I'm afraid I can be killed at any time. They can turn me into dust with just a glare. This won't do. No, I have to hurry up and cultivate. I have to raise my cultivation to a level where I can protect myself. Zhou Xiaoduo entered the Tower of Annihilation. After entering, he was shocked. He saw the Huahuang sword flying around excitedly, dragging a long trail of flames behind it. Below, Xiao spread her wings and looked at the Huahuang sword in the sky vigilantly, chirping anxiously. Her wings were like an old hen protecting her chicks, full of vigilance. Behind Xiao there was a small mountain of essence of the primordial fire. It turned out that after Xiao swallowed all the essence of the primordial fire, she had filled up the storage space in her body. However, the essence of the primordial fire was of extraordinary quality. Gathering and storing a large amount of it in one place was a method of overloading. It was far beyond what Xiao could bear. It would be fine if there was no movement at all. Once Xiao cultivated, he could ignite all of them at any time. He had to spit them out first, and then cultivate them one by one. In fact, this was Zhao's original plan. As long as he returned to the Tower of Annihilation, he would be home. There was no difference between storing the essence of the primordial fire and storing it in his own storage space. However, he missed out on one person. Well, it was the Huahuang sword who had recovered a little of its mobility. Eager to hunt, how could it let go of such a heaven-sent opportunity to heal itself? Therefore, when Xiao lowered his head and vomited, the Huahuang sword stole from behind Zhao's butt. Although the Huahuang sword's mobility was still limited, it was still a huge loss. After vomiting for a long time, Xiao finally found the thief, and realized that the thief had stolen a lot of the essence of the primordial fire. Naturally, he was instantly enraged to the point where he could not restrain himself. He immediately rushed up to the sky, wanting to fight the Huahuang sword to the death. However, the Huahuang sword did not fight with him at all. It simply escaped quickly, then turned around twice and rushed down again. It would steal one essence at a time. It needed time to digest them anyway. Eating them one by one was the right way to go. And as it swallowed one essence after another, the fire on the sword burned even brighter. Xiao Xiao, on the other hand, went crazy. He could not catch up. He could not beat it. He could not guard against it. He simply placed all the essence of the primordial fire behind his butt and guarded it motionlessly. Like an old hen protecting its young, it cried loudly. The Huahuang sword drew lines in the air, making the sky look like a spider web. It darted back and forth, looking for an opportunity to attack. Zhao's head followed the trajectory of the Huahuang sword's flight. After a long time, he felt a little dizzy. However, he did not dare to relax. He could only endure the dizziness and stare at the sword. I won't let you steal my things. If this went on for a long time, Zhao's head would get dizzier. He would definitely lose if he continued to guard. It was inevitable that he would be slowly eaten away by the Huahuang sword. Fortunately, at this moment Zhou Xiaoduo came in. When the Huahuang sword saw Zhou Xiaoduo coming, it immediately flew back to the top of the Demon League's mountain range. It shone brightly and shone in all directions. It was majestic and insufferably arrogant. It did not feel the slightest bit ashamed of its previous actions. It could be said that it was shameless. Xiao was overjoyed. He immediately wanted to rush into his mother's arms. However, as soon as he moved, he felt dizzy and spun around twice. Then he fell to the ground with a thud. Just now, he was already dizzy from the Huahuang sword. He was just holding on with one breath. Now that he was relaxed, he could not hold on any longer. On the mountain range, the Huahuang sword hummed. It was full of regret. If I had known that little seven could not hold on any longer, I would have been half full by now. What a pity. With the arrival of that despicable boss, this opportunity was wasted. Swordsmanship frowned. What's going on? Looking at the space, the fire energy soared to the sky. The temperature had already reached a rather exaggerated level. The highest point of the Demon League's mountain range was already 100 meters high. However, the average height was still not enough. Moreover, it was completely bare. Obviously, it was still one step away from being fully formed. On the other hand, the mountain range of the astral souls was much more verdant. It was pleasing to the eye. As for the spiritual energy in the entire space, it was almost twice as rich as the last time he entered. Squeak squeak. Xiao pounced over. He grabbed Zhuxiaoduo's trousers with 3 claws and complained angrily. As he spoke, he used his wings to point at the Wahuang sword that was stuck on the mountain peak. That grief, that anger, that hatred, coupled with the fact that he was complaining so quickly, all showed the extreme hatred in his mind. Finally, someone who could make the decision was here. Mama hit him. Zhuxiaoduo was almost melted by his cuteness. He could not help but laugh. Okay. I'll settle the score with him right now. Xiao whined. His mood immediately changed into one of high spirits and satisfaction. Zhuxiaoduo's eyes saw the pile of essence fire. He rolled his eyes and said, "It's not safe to leave these things here. They're even coveted by others. Let me keep them for you. When you need them, I'll give you as much as you need. How about that? If you leave them here, they'll all be stolen." Xiao widened his eyes and looked at his mother. He felt that his mother's words made a lot of sense. If he left them here, they would only be stolen by that despicable sword. He might as well let his mother keep them for him. He nodded quickly. Okay. Zhuxiaoduo laughed. Just as he was about to put them away, he saw the Wahuang sword fly over from afar. It stopped above Xiao, lamenting his misfortune and angry at his failure to fight. Idiot! Is he keeping them for you? He's just confiscating them. Haven't you heard the story of keeping your New Year's money? Why are you so stupid? You're pissing me off. Now that they're in his pocket, do you think you can still take them out? Use your soybean-sized brain and think about it carefully. Stupid bird. Squeak squeak. Xiao retorted indignantly. I'm happy to. I won't let you steal them. My mother is just keeping them for me. I won't listen to your sowing discord. The Wahuang sword was so angry that its lungs were about to explode. This little thing could not be reasoned with at all. He did not understand how terrible it was for a child to let an adult keep their New Year's money. Chapter 1029. That was simply like entering the mouth of a Pichio. There was no return, and there was no return. This guy was so naive that it made his stomach explode, not to mention the boss in front of him, who was simply a real Pichio. There was no return. You should be more careful. I won't. I'll anger you to death. Humph. The Wahuang sword flew away again with a whoosh. It was really infuriating. Why was this guy so stupid? The 7th prince used to be smart and farsighted. How did he become a fool now? A stupid bird that it really made people speechless. Zhuxiaoduo chuckled. He waved his hand and collected all the true fire essences in front of him, leaving only 10 for Xiao. He said, "Is 10 enough for you to cultivate for one time?" "It's enough. These are enough for me to use for 3 days. Thank you, mother." Xiao was very happy. He was elated. He no longer had to worry about the thief sword coming to steal him. My baby is safe. Great. He looked at the Wahuang sword as if he was demonstrating. Come and steal again. You can. Thief sword. The Wahuang sword saw this scene and was so angry that he turned around on the top of the mountain. I'm so angry. This stupid bird. Others took away hundreds of thousands of true fire essences and only left 10 for him. He was actually so happy that he jumped high and thanked him sweetly with his little mouth. That I've never seen such a stupid bird, that it was even more stupid than being sold and helping others to bargain and count the money. That was simply stupid to the extreme. He didn't want to look anymore. If he looked again, his heart would explode from anger. It was better to hurry and absorb the true fire essences that he had just stolen. Cultivate well. Zhuxiaoduo patted Zhao's head. Mother is still waiting for you to help me in the future. I will definitely cultivate well. I will definitely help Mother. Whatever Mother needs, you can leave it to me. I will do it all for you. Xiao proudly puffed out his chest. Good. Mother will count on you in the future. Go and cultivate. I've also started cultivating. Xiaoduo, who was now able to call himself Mother smoothly, and had become more and more shameless, sent Xiao away, then took out the Book of Spirit Fire Spell, which was passed down by Zhu Rong, ancestor of Magi. Xiao Chen circulated the Flaming Sun scripture, and infused his Scarlet Sun Golden Sun cultivation into the Primordial Flame art. The contents of the Primordial Flame art slowly appeared. Xiaoduo read it carefully, memorizing and thinking about it word by word. He memorized the entire secret manual in his heart. After confirming it over and over again, he didn't even make a mistake in punctuation. If he guessed correctly, this primordial fire art would not exist for too long. After all, there was only one inheritor, and Zhu Rong probably did not intend to spread his art everywhere. Not everyone could master it. Just as expected, after Xiaoduo finished reading and confirming that he had memorized everything, he checked it 3 more times. The primordial flame art suddenly blazed and turned into the most primordial flame between heaven and earth. It floated in front of Xiaoduo. In addition to Zhu Rong's primordial fire art, this primordial flame also contained the power of the Scarlet Sun Golden Sun that Xiaoduo had infused. However, the power of Zhu Rong's primordial fire had already assimilated, melted, and compressed the power of the Scarlet Sun Golden Sun into one. The Zhu Rong's primordial fire floated in the air. The flames danced and burned quietly. The heat was not exposed at all. It was silent. However, Xiaoduo could clearly sense that this flame contained a valiant power that could destroy heaven and earth. Once it exploded, it would be extremely terrifying. Right now, not even the slightest bit of heat was leaking out of the fire, because Zhu Rong, ancestor of sorcery, had refined the fire and turned it into a completely controllable fire. However, if the fire was triggered by the corresponding cultivation method, it would still instantly burst out with a power that could incinerate everything in the world. It's really a miraculous cultivation method that seizes the fortune of heaven and earth. Miraculous flame. Xiaoduo gasped in amazement. Then, he sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate the primordial flame art. The first step of cultivating the primordial flame art was to completely disperse the power of the Scarlet Sun Golden Sun in the Dantian, and turn it into the most primordial and purest spiritual power. Then he would begin to meditate. Xiaoduo worked hard for a long time. Based on his perception of the passage of time, almost 10 days had passed. However, at this moment, he only felt a slight heat in his dantian. It seemed that it was only at the beginning of gestation that Xiaoduo knew that more haste, less speed. He slowly stopped, got up, and sighed softly. It's worthy of being called the #1 fire-type cultivation method in the world. Just getting started is already so difficult. Xiaoduo could not help but feel dejected. Previously, he could basically get started with any cultivation method that he cultivated. After 1 or 2 days, he could get on the right track, and even break through a small realm. In the past, when he cultivated the Flaming Sun scripture, he was able to reach the entry level very quickly. One must know that although the Flaming Sun scripture was far inferior to the Zhurong True Fire, in terms of rank, it was still one of the top fire attribute cultivation techniques in the 3 continents. However, after cultivating the primordial flame art for more than 10 days, he still could not get started. One must know that this was the result of wholeheartedly cultivating in seclusion, without any distractions. His progress was really too slow. How can this cultivation method be so difficult? Is it really not compatible? Or is it because the physique of the human race and the Wu people's Zhu Wu's cultivation method contradict each other? Is this the result of forcing myself to cultivate? The more Xiaoduo thought about it, the more puzzled he became. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. At this moment, the primordial flame that was burning in front of him suddenly jumped inexplicably. Then, it revealed an emotion similar to extreme speechlessness That how far have you gotten? Back then, even Zhu Rong had to cultivate for who knows how many years to get started. You've only cultivated for more than 10 days, and you can already feel it. You actually think that it's too long? This is simply making me speechless. Stupid. Idiot. Yes, someone who can feel it in just 10 days can't be considered stupid or idiotic. At the very least, he lacks both IQ and EQ. What's so great about just cultivating talent? Yes, that's still not right. Just cultivating talent is already very amazing, that after drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Xiaoduo felt that the vitality in the room was so dense that it almost became clouds. His heart was filled with warmth and gratitude. There was no need to think about it. This was a benefit from the people's livelihood. A large amount of vitality was gathered and channeled into his room. This was to help him cultivate, that it seemed that this old man was still full of kindness to him. But he was cultivating in the Tower of Destruction, so he couldn't use this vitality. That's what Xiaoduo thought quickly, and opened the door that connected the Tower of Destruction to the outside world. The vitality inside the Tower of Destruction was thin, while the vitality outside was rich. It would be a waste not to use it. Under the contrast of the two, the rich vitality in the room was automatically channeled into the Tower of Destruction. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Tower of Destruction was like a super high-power black hole suction fan, sweeping away all the vitality in the room. As for the interior of the tower, he did not feel anything. After all, the interior of the space was not small. The massive amount of vitality in the room was so dense that it was frightening. When it landed on the entire tower, it was instantly diluted to the point where there was no trace left. But this time, Xiaoduo was not greedy. As soon as the vitality in the room was devoured, he immediately closed the door of the Tower of Destruction. This vitality must have been given to him by Elder One Minxing for his cultivation. It was understandable that he used it. However, Elder One was from the Ling clan. Vitality was his source of life. Mengqi couldn't take too much. After all, to such an old man who had saved the world, it would be immature of him if he went too far. Such a person, no matter how much respect he had, should be respected. If he were to freely absorb his life force, not to mention the karma, the enormous sin and so on, even his conscience would not be able to live with it. He came out to look at the time. Well, it seemed that only 3 hours had passed. After a short rest, Xiaoduo felt that his mind was clear, and his body was full of spiritual energy. So he went in again. Continued to cultivate. Cultivate. Cultivate Zuwu's real fire. Cultivate the primordial fire technique. I have to cultivate as soon as possible and succeed in it. Outside, Wan Minxing walked in from the door of the courtyard. Further away, the few trees that Xiaoduo had crashed into had been restored. Even the bark had grown out. Wan Minxing looked extremely happy. His face was full of joy. Wherever he passed, the flowers and plants swayed gently, sending out waves of gratitude. The branches and leaves of the trees shook as they bowed to Wan Minxing. Countless vitality emerged from the countless plants and gathered on Wan Minxing. On the ground, all the insects had been imprisoned by the spiritual energy of the flowers and plants. They were sent far away to prevent these small creatures from disturbing the peace of Wan Minxing. The entire heavenly spirit forest had been cleaned up by the spiritual plants. There wasn't even a spider web. Only butterflies, bees, grasshoppers and other less harmful creatures could get close to Elder Wan's residence. Other creatures such as mosquitoes, cockroaches, poisonous snakes, rats, spiders, centipedes and so on. There wasn't a single one of them that had the power to attack, or were poisonous. This place was indeed even more otherworldly than a paradise. The fragrance of flowers wafted in the air. Occasionally, the big trees in the sky would tilt their branches. A few big trees worked together to let the sunlight in for a period of time, shining on the grass below. That every blade of grass, every petal, contained sparkling and translucent dewdrops, that when the sunlight shone, the entire forest was colorful everywhere. It was crystal clear, beautiful, and infinitely magnificent. Wan Minxing looked at this scene with a comfortable smile on his face. To him, becoming a king or a saint, being invincible in the world, and being admired by the world was not as good as this moment. Looking at these little spirits growing healthily, As far as the eye could see, the entire world was full of vitality. This was Wan Minxing's lifelong pursuit, a boundless scene. I really want to go to the human world to take a look. Wan Minxing waved his hand and returned the vitality that the spiritual plants had given him. He narrowed his eyes and looked forward to it. Chapter 1030. The reason why he had such thoughts was that Wan Minxing was attracted by the scenery outside described by Zhuxiaoduo. During the famine years, his descendants Perslan had fed many people. Now it was a flourishing age. It was great. People didn't have to starve to death. People didn't have to live so helplessly. It was great. No matter what, it was a flourishing age. If that was the case, it seemed that he had a part to play. He couldn't help but feel excited. It's a flourishing age outside. People don't have to worry about food and clothing. They live and work in peace and contentment. They don't have to worry about making a living. They do their jobs and don't have to worry about survival. It's peaceful and leisurely. What a beautiful world this is. I really want to see it. Wan Minxing looked forward to it more and more. A flourishing age. A flourishing age. Wan Minxing looked forward to it and sighed. When the great calamity comes, the flourishing age will turn into ruins in the blink of an eye. The battle of the general trend is so unkind to the small people. He looked in the other two directions, which were the habitat of the demon race and the demon race. There were many great demons and great demons who were waiting for battle. They were really looking forward to the arrival of chaos and the beginning of the great calamity of heaven and earth again, that those fellows were destined not to listen to his advice. Perhaps they could understand his good intentions, but they still wouldn't do as he said. They would still hope for that little bit of luck, and hope to reach the sky in one step and return to glory. A great calamity of heaven and earth. Wan Minxing looked at the flowers and trees in the entire forest worriedly and sighed softly. A great calamity of heaven and earth. As his mood sank, the entire forest was filled with green spots of light. Countless spiritual plants sent vitality to comfort this respectable old man carefully. Although they didn't know why he was suddenly unhappy, everyone did their best to comfort him carefully. They walked to the door of Zhuxiaoduo's room. Wan Minxing was suddenly bewildered. He had clearly injected so much life force into him, hoping to protect him. Even if there was an accident, he would be able to preserve a chance of survival. Why did he suddenly become the same as before? His life force all gone. It was no different from the other places in this forest. It was even worse. What was going on? Could it be that it was all absorbed by this kid so quickly? With a flick of his hand, a beam of green light entered the room, and the room was once again filled with an extremely rich vitality. To Wan Minxing, this kind of life force energy was inexhaustible. Who knew how vast the entire forest was, providing him with life force? As long as the plants grew here, they would be grateful for their vitality every day. It had long been overflowing. Therefore, Elder One didn't feel any heartache when he casually gave it away. He didn't even care about Zhuxiaoduo's cultivation. He just sat down on the chair, and his spiritual consciousness turned into countless green lights that scattered in all directions of the forest. To see if any of the trees were bullied by other trees and couldn't absorb enough nutrients, she checked to see if there were any plants that had been harmed by the monsters and demons, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and whether they needed treatment. Green lights flashed in all directions of the forest, disappearing in a flash. Some of the trees that were already injured suddenly regained all of their vitality. Their branches and leaves were flourishing. Elder Wan's spiritual avatar circled the entire forest. It was very fast, like a fleeting shadow, but it only took 2 hours. He finally opened his eyes in satisfaction. With a comfortable smile, he felt the gratitude of the entire forest, and his mood became better. With a warm smile on his face, he turned to look at the room where Zhuxiaoduo was cultivating. He couldn't help but stare. This wasn't right. How could the vitality inside be gone again? How long had it been? Wan Minxing frowned and sensed the room. There was no one inside. Now he finally felt that something was wrong. One had to know that Wan Minxing's cultivation level was at the peak of this world. With Zhuxiaoduo's shallow cultivation level, it was impossible for him to come and go without a trace. The reason why he didn't notice before was because he was careless. After all, although he had a benevolent personality, in the heavenly spirit forest, there was no doubt that he was the number one. He had been at ease for too long, and that was why he made the mistake before. Anzwa Xiaoduo kept swallowing spiritual energy and couldn't see anyone. The first time was due to carelessness, but the second time was very strange. Wan Minsheng walked over to take a look. He slowly spread out his spiritual power. Finally, his brows relaxed and he murmured, "No wonder. It turns out that there is a spatial and time equipment. But it's not very advanced that I can detect. This low-level spatial equipment has the power of time. Once the great calamity arises, and he uses it as a trump card, I'm afraid that he will be caught like a turtle in a jar, and everything will be for naught. Let's see how the time changes." Wan Minsheng frowned and murmured to himself. He was a little relieved and a little envious. Since ancient times, the Son of Heaven's destiny has been unparalleled in the world. He really lives up to his reputation, but at most, he can only grow to the level of a sage. He can't completely eliminate the great calamity. And this was Xiaoduo. I don't know if he can break the curse, but is the prophecy referring to him? Wan Minsheng frowned and thought carefully. How many saints' hearts can be changed with a single thought? How many saints' hearts can be changed with Zhuo Xiaoduo? How many? If it's the saint's heart, it should be the saint of saints. But this change, it's definitely someone's change. The heavenly way is incomplete, and it can't be derived. I feel that there are other reasons. Maybe I should. Wan Minsheng hesitated for a long time. Finally, he made up his mind. I'll bet on this. He waited patiently. After more than 10 minutes, he heard a puff in the room. Zhuo Xiaoduo came out. He panted and muttered to himself. What the hell? What kind of broken technique is this? It's too difficult to get started. I've been practicing until my blood vessels and meridians are about to catch fire. And I'm still one step away. When will this end? When I practiced all the techniques in the past, I was able to get started immediately and succeed in a matter of days. But now, just as he was panting, he suddenly saw the green light flash and dissipate. Then, the room was filled with dense vitality again. There's no need, Elder Wan. It was very rare for Zhuo Xiaoduo to directly reject any benefits. He stuck his head out of the window and said, I have no use for this vitality qi. In order not to waste it, I will use it for other purposes. If I really absorb it with all my strength, I'm afraid it will cause harm to you. Forget it, please don't throw it in here. In the divine sense space, Bai and Jiu were so angry that they rolled their eyes. How could he reject such a good thing? Was his mother stupid? Could it be that she hurt her head when she fell head first? There was so much space here, and he was willing to give it to her. What's wrong with taking a little more? Sigh, his mother was good at everything, but sometimes she was too honest. He hoped that her head wasn't really hurt. Whitey and little Jiu leaned there, butts against each other, letting out long and short sighs. They really wanted to go out, but they were afraid that they would be exposed and cause trouble for their mother, that the old man outside was so powerful. Moreover, his energy was almost of the same origin as ours. If we went out, the old man might have some evil intentions. He might catch us and eat us alive. That's not impossible. We must always be on our guard. Wan Minsheng smiled and said, I've been here for tens of thousands of years. I may not be able to give you anything else, but I have as much vitality as you want. He looked at Zhuo Xiaoduo meaningfully and said, If it were someone else, I might have to be careful and be on guard. But if you want it, no matter how much you want, I'll try my best to provide it. Even if you don't want it, I'll give you some. Today's meeting was not in vain. Zhuo Xiaoduo was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears and asked, Why? Wan Minsheng sighed softly and said, The reason for this is that this old man wants to form a karma with you, little friend. Zhuo Xiaoduo was puzzled. Elder Wan, you've been here for so many years. You've already benefited the world and benefited countless people. Moreover, you've guarded the inheritance of Zuwu Zhurong's primordial fire for so many years just to wait for my arrival. There's already a bond of karma between us that can't be severed. Why do you have to pay another price? And it's such a big favor? Wan Minsheng smiled. It's not enough. Not enough. Yes, it's not enough. And it's far from enough, very far from enough. Wan Minxing took a deep breath and said, I'm willing to give you everything in exchange for a promise from you. Zhou Xiaoduo frowned and said straightforwardly, It doesn't matter if it's a promise. As long as I can do it, I'll do it for you. Elder Wan, based on what you've done and contributed to the world, I won't refuse. Wan Minxing said solemnly, The world is unpredictable. I only ask that you, if you can dominate the world in the future and destroy life with the snap of your fingers, then let the Ling clan live. Elder Wan, aren't you thinking too highly of me? Zhou Xiaoduo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Such a lofty goal. Firstly, I don't have such great ability. I can't do it at all. Secondly, even if I'm really that awesome in the future, with the foundation between us, I'll help you even if you don't ask. Wan Minxing said seriously, That's different. How is it different? There are too many things in the world that are unpredictable. It's especially so in the future. The future of the Ling clan may not be as you wish. The members of the Ling clan may not all be like us. How can such a big clan not make any mistakes? And you're willing to help me. It has nothing to do with karma. Correspondingly, there's no binding force. If the Ling clan offends you at that time, you don't care. Don't ask, don't help, and even destroy them ruthlessly. Who can say anything? But what I want is a promise, a peace of mind, an established karma, a complete promise, to ensure that the Ling clan can continue to live in the future, and that the clan won't be destroyed. Chapter 1031. Wan Minxing spoke very seriously, as if he had foreseen that Zhou Xiaoduo would achieve great things, and that the spirit race would anger Zhou Xiaoduo for some reason. Zhou Xiaoduo could only smile bitterly. Elder Wan, you really think too highly of me. Are you so sure that I can reach such heights? Is there a need to be so cautious, and nip the problem in the bud? I can't be sure, but I don't need to be sure either. Wan Minxing said. Then why? There's always a need to invest in advance. Timely help is always more important than adding flowers to a brocade. Wan Minxing smiled bitterly. What you said just now is exactly what I'm thinking now. I'm taking precautions. Zhou Xiaoduo couldn't help but laugh. Aren't you too far-sighted? This is basically a bet. It's not a good habit. Wan Minxing smiled. A bet is also a bet. Gambling was not a good habit. But since ancient times, no one had been able to escape from this word. As long as you're born as a human, you'll have to gamble in your life. Zhou Xiaoduo said. As far as I know, there are many people who don't gamble in their lives. If they don't gamble, they won't lose. This bet is different from that. Wan Minxing chuckled. The bet you're talking about is a bet of wealth. But the bet I'm talking about is a bet of life. A bet of life? How? Zhou Xiaoduo said. If everyone has to gamble with their lives, then wouldn't the entire world be a bunch of desperados? Not really. Wan Minxing knew very well that Zhou Xiaoduo was rambling. Zhou Xiaoduo was a rare genius. Having cultivated to this level, he also knew very well that his luck could not be replicated. No one in the entire continent could be luckier than him. Zhou Xiaoduo's intention was very clear. He did not want to be tainted by this karma, because this was bound to be a burden in the future. Whether he could do it or not, it would be a problem. It might even be a huge problem. The promise involved an entire race, not just one or two people. Not being able to do it was also a hindrance. Although it was easy, it was a flaw in the state of mind. Others asked me to do something after I became the mayor. But I didn't become the mayor in this lifetime. It was too depressing. Therefore, Zhou Xiaoduo did not want to accept it. Even though he knew that there were huge benefits in front of him, and there was a high chance that he would not be able to fulfill his promise, he still did not want to get involved in this karma. Wan Minxing understood Zhou Xiaoduo's mentality very well. He was probably the person who valued promises the most. Naturally, he knew the stakes involved. Therefore, he could only try his best to convince Zhou Xiaoduo to accept this karma. Young friend, the word gamble plays a huge role in a person's life. No one can avoid it. Often when a person's fate is determined, at the most important turning point in life, everyone needs to gamble. Since ancient times, life has always been a gamble, and there are always bets. even to the point that everyone is gambling their life and betting at every moment. Ordinary people need to gamble. At the critical juncture of life, if you choose the left, you may be rich and safe. If you choose the right, you may be consigned to eternal damnation and be poor for life. High officials and rich people need to gamble. At the critical juncture of life, if you choose the left, you will have a meteoric rise. If you choose the right, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. Nobles, generals, and ministers also need to gamble. If you choose the left path, you will have a foundation for eternity. If you choose the right path, you will lose all standing and reputation, and not even your bones will be left. And martial artists need to gamble even more. Looking at the life of a martial artist, they really need to gamble too many times. What they bet on is life and death. This is gambling. As long as you are alive, you need to gamble. You must gamble. Winning a bet and losing a bet, the results are different, but in fact the root cause is the same. Ordinary people gamble. If they lose, they still have a chance to turn things around. But the higher the status of a person, once they lose a bet, they will be consigned to eternal damnation. If a martial artist loses a bet, it is even more obvious that he will die. Young friend, you are now facing such a juncture. Whether you accept my bet or not is also a gamble for you. Swishaoduo murmured. It is also a gamble for me. That's right. Wan Minxing said. My chips are the benefits that you can see at the moment. For example, this infinite vitality. Even connate spiritual treasures do not have so much vitality. You can use it however you want. Also, I see that you have a paradise unique treasure that can control the flow of time. I can help you perfect it to the point that even a half-saint will not be able to detect it. Previously, you said that your progress in the witch fire cultivation method is a little slow. I can do my best to help you cultivate Zuwu Zhurong's legacy fire. In this aspect, in the entire world, in all the races in the universe, unless Zuwu Zhurong comes back to life, no one can understand the secrets of Zhurong's primordial fire better than me. If you still think it is not enough, I promise that I will owe you another favor. I will not refuse any request. Yes, you can use all the heavenly treasures in this forest as you wish. This is not included in the benefits that I will give you. Swishaoduo could not help but be moved when he heard this. These conditions were really too good. It was too hard to refuse. Infinite vitality, perfect the void destruction pagoda, cultivate the legacy fire, and a favor from a half-saint. It could be any favor that he wanted, and all the heavenly treasures that were not considered benefits. Oh my God! For Swishaoduo, who valued wealth as much as his life, this was simply an itch to him, although he knew that if he agreed, it might be super troublesome in the future. But he really could not refuse such a temptation. In the void destruction pagoda, the Wahuang sword was vibrating with all its might. Say yes. Say yes. You must say yes. You must say yes. That is a half-saint, a half-saint. Xiao kept jumping. Say yes. Say yes. In the divine sense space, Bai and Jiu were jumping crazily. Mama. Say yes. Mama. Say yes. Swishaoduo raised his head and rolled his eyes. He really wanted to say yes. He had already wanted to blurt out and say yes several times. But there is still the most important one, Xiaolong. I did not ask for his opinion, but this guy's obsession with benefits is no less than mine. His answer is obvious. But I'll still ask. First, I'll test the respect that I have for my companions. Xiaolong, do you think I should say yes? Swishaoduo was very modest and asked very seriously, although the greed in his heart had already risen so high that it blotted out the sky. If Xiaolong really said no, Swishaoduo would still choose to refuse. Because although Xiaolong was also very greedy, and sometimes the characteristics of 9 feet higher sky were not inferior to his, this kind of spiritual creature that was formed by pure luck was often sensitive to the future, or some fate to an extent that ordinary people could not imagine. Xiaolong hesitated and said, Boss, I really want to tell you not to say yes. But you can't refuse the benefits offered by this old man. Once you refuse, it will be a great hindrance to your future achievements. If you lose today's opportunity, even if you still have great achievements, it will be delayed for a long time. But now is the time to seize every second. In the end, there will only be returns if there is effort. But the troubles in the future, besides being unavoidable, will also not be small. There will only be returns if there is effort and vice versa. Zuoxiao's lips twitched. Your words are equivalent to not saying anything. Isn't that why I'm hesitating? Boss, you should make the decision yourself. Xiao Long said apologetically. It's just a thought to make a choice. Right now, I'm still too weak. The change in front of us, or the choice you made in the future, is a matter of fate. I'm still far from reaching such a high level. Zuo became more and more conflicted. If Wan Minxing was only talking about a few people or a certain part of them, Zuo would not need to ask for any conditions at all, and would directly agree. If it was someone else who said this to Zuo would have already agreed, regardless of whether he could do it or not. Zuo had not done things that he could do but not do. It was not the first time that he went back on his word. When the time came, he would just go back on his word. But in the face of such a respectable old man, Zuo did not want to deceive him in any way. If he agreed, he had to do it. If he did not agree, he had his own considerations. Moreover, Zuo had another understanding. That was Wan Minxing, a powerful person with such a high cultivation level, took the initiative to make this bet with him, and placed such a heavy bet. This meant that Wan Minxing must have foreseen something or confirmed something. At the very least, it was highly possible for him to reach that step. There was no doubt about this. Otherwise, Wan Minxing would not have brought up this matter so seriously. There were some things that the other party saw, but he did not. This was a great injustice for the current situation. But this was a loss that he would have to suffer in silence. Because Wan Minxing would never explain the reason behind it. What Xiaolong said was that only with effort would there be rewards and vice versa. This made Zuo ponder deeply. With so many benefits, his cultivation base and strength would definitely improve greatly, and it would greatly shorten the time he needed to improve his strength. Now, wasn't he lacking time? Could it be that he was destined to jump into this trap? Wan Minxing looked at Zuo seriously. Looking at his increasingly complicated expression, he said apologetically, Young friend, I'm indeed forcing you to do something you don't want to do, and I even suspect that I'm threatening you. But I'm the only one left in the spirit clan in this world, and the only one who can be involved in karma with you at this stage. This bet is imperative. Just like in the past, Wu people, Gonggong and Hutu, the two great Zuwu, came to the spirit clan and made a promise with me to cut off a chance of survival for all living beings. I understand Elder Wan's considerations. Zuo took a deep breath and said seriously, This bet, this karma, I'll take it. I agree. Thank you for your help, young friend. Wan Minxing's eyes were full of gratification and joy. He looked like he had put down a huge burden in his heart. Chapter 1032. Elder Wan, you're too polite. Zuo smiled bitterly and said, Not to mention that the benefits you offered are extremely great, and I have no possibility of refusing at all. Just the fact that you've been discussing with me from the beginning to the end, and didn't use your strength to force me, is already a great favor. With your strength, it's not difficult to force me to agree, and even make an oath to the heavenly Tao. After all, my life is now here. I have no choice but to compromise. Zuo smiled and said, Elder, you're open and above board. If I don't take responsibility for it, it won't make sense. Wan Minxing was completely relieved. He laughed and said, You're the one who's open and above board. I'm a little ashamed to be called that. Elder Wan, you're kind-hearted and treat all living beings well. Your merit is boundless. Everything should go smoothly. Then it's a deal. It's a deal, Zuo said. Do I need to make an oath to the heavenly Tao? Wan Minxing chuckled. A gentleman's word. Why should I restrain it? What's more, my heart is with you and me. What's the heavenly Tao to rely on? Zuo immediately smiled. Not to mention that the Taoist heart was stable, and the cycle of karma could not be violated. This trust alone was enough to make Zuo feel very comfortable. Moreover, Wan Minqing's words just now made Zhuo suddenly have a strange feeling. It even made him feel that even without the previous conditions, Wan Minqing's casual words at this moment were completely worth it. My heart is with you and me. What's the heavenly Tao to rely on? Zhuo chewed on these two sentences and felt that his cheeks were full of fragrance. It was as if the road in front of him had once again expanded infinitely. It was a kind of blank and endless road. It led straight to the boundless distance. What Wan Minqing said was, my heart is with you and me. What's the heavenly Tao to rely on? However, Zhuo heard another meaning from this sentence. This heart only belongs to me. How can the heavenly Tao rely on it? At this moment, his heart surged, and his state of mind underwent an indescribable change. It was as if it was a little different from before. An inexplicable aura of enlightenment emanated from Zhuo. Wan Minqing, who witnessed this scene with his own eyes, was immediately stunned. This was... How did he suddenly realize it? What did I just say? This kind of breakthrough in the state of mind only lasted for a very short period of time. It was almost like a flash of light. That was why it was called a flash of inspiration. Wan Minqing waited quietly, a carefree smile on his face. His state of mind had indeed improved. But this improvement would have to wait until he went out and stepped into the world of mortals again, before he could truly feel the difference in his state of mind. He couldn't feel it here. This was perhaps the most peaceful place in the world, the place with the least amount of conflict. After a long time, Zhuo opened his eyes and said sincerely, the sky is high and the earth is vast. Wan Minqing's eyes flashed with surprise again. Could it be that this brat had sensed something from here? This was not simple. Zhuo turned his head and said amiably, Elder Wan, you just said that I have a grotto heaven treasure that can control time? How did you know? Wan Minqing's eyes widened. This brat was good in every other aspect. His appearance was outstanding, and his comprehension was also outstanding. His temperament and wisdom were all excellent, but he was a little too practical. They had just settled the karmic bond between them, and he was already asking for benefits. He was so anxious to ask for debts that it was as if he was afraid that he wouldn't give it to him. How could he be the kind of person who would go back on his words? He inexplicably felt that there was something wrong with his promise just now. This brat's character was very clear. As long as he felt at ease, he would be able to empty this place. Now it seemed that he really felt that taking things from this place and asking for benefits from this old man, his conscience was at ease. He had a bad feeling about this. You entered the room to practice, but disappeared immediately. This is too obvious. I didn't notice it the first time. It was probably because I had been at ease for too long, and I didn't deliberately supervise you. But you disappeared twice in a row. With your cultivation, other than the fact that you have a grotto heaven treasure on you, there is no other possibility for you to disappear silently in front of me. This is also the biggest hidden danger when you travel the Jianghu in the future and face experts. Yes, I understand. Zhuo really understood. Not to mention anything else. Just the pursuit of the Umno alliance this time was enough to prove it. Also, this so-called grotto heaven treasure. To be honest, this is the first time I've heard of this term. Can you tell me more about it in detail? And what is it about controlling time? Do all the so-called grotto heaven treasures have this kind of effect? Of course not. Space equipment can be roughly divided into several categories. The lowest level of storage space is small and doesn't have the ability to control the flow of time. In other words, it only has the ability to store things. This category mostly uses cloth bags as carriers, which are the so-called storage bags. The next level is the space equipment that can control the flow of time and has a relatively larger storage space. Because time doesn't flow in the internal space, it will be the same as what is put in and out. Naturally, it is more advanced. Most of them use rings as carriers, which are the so-called storage rings. And the higher level of space equipment, well, the higher level shouldn't be described as equipment. It should be called a magic treasure. The internal space is vast and it forms a world of its own. It is another small world independent of the current world, so it is called a grotto heaven. This kind of magic treasure was common in the ancient times. Basically, every upper-level cultivator would refine a similar grotto heaven, but today it may be relatively rare. Swishaoduo couldn't help being fascinated. He asked, "You said that this kind of grotto heaven was common in the ancient times. What do you mean?" Wan Minxing didn't hesitate and explained in detail. The powerful people in the ancient times opened up their own space. They thought that their own Taoist right and cave abode were trivial and not worth anything. In fact, the rare treasure in your hand, strictly speaking, was originally a low-level storage equipment with a larger space. It could only carry people in. The main carrier in its bones was just an ordinary treasure of heaven and earth. But you used your spirit as a guide to completely refine it, and it transformed. Then you integrated a lot of treasures of heaven and earth, and even the chi of the earth and vein of the earth. That's why it had an essential transformation, right? Swishaoduo turned pale with fright. He prostrated himself on all fours and said, "You can see that?" It wasn't that Swishaoduo wasn't shocked. Wan Minxing's words had exposed the essence of the Tower of Destruction, and even the root of its transformation. He had almost pointed out the existence of Xiaolong. How could Swishaoduo not be surprised? Wan Minxing said, "These are just trivial matters. As long as you come from a certain era, or have some knowledge, you don't even need to see it. You can guess it just by guessing. With your current cultivation, you can indeed appear and disappear unpredictably with this method. If you meet a weak person or someone who is not much stronger than you now, they won't be able to find you. They will only be fooled by you. However, if you meet a top cultivator, they only need to grasp the moment when you disappear to let them know where you are. Even if your rare treasure is connected to your spirit, it will be of no use. It may even be worse. Once they use the position of the rare treasure to attack your spirit, it will be beyond the capacity of your rare treasure. Not only will the rare treasure be destroyed, but your spirit will also be destroyed. Then both your spirit and your spirit will be destroyed, and you will be doomed eternally. Therefore, in my eyes, your trump card is too fragile. This is a fatal crisis." Wan Minxing smiled faintly. "When I mentioned that I would help you to perfect it, I was actually worried that you would die prematurely. Because once you encounter such a situation, people will definitely not allow you to run out again." Swishaoduo smiled embarrassedly. "Then I will have to trouble you later. I don't know what kind of improvement you will have after you perfect it." "Damn, so you are still afraid that I am not afraid of the dark, and will run around looking for ghosts all day long. If I meet a tough person one day, I will lose my life." Wan Minxing smiled. "I can't guarantee anything else, but I can help you perfect it. At least, cultivators below the half-saint level won't be able to see the trace of the rare treasure you carry with you. Of course, if you meet a real dominator between heaven and earth, you will still have nowhere to hide. You still have to pay attention to this." Swishaoduo said, "Why do you always think so highly of me? Is it so easy to meet a dominator? Even if I want to meet one, I'm afraid they will ignore me. By the way, how many people like this are there?" Elder One frowned and said, "Since ancient times, there should not be more than 10 people. Then it will be fine." Swishaoduo was relieved and said, "It is not so easy to meet such people. Even if I meet one, I will be more careful." Wan Minxing laughed and said, "I really don't know if I should hope that your cultivation will progress faster or slower. After all, if your cultivation is not enough, I am afraid that you will have no hope of meeting such a powerful person in your life. But if they want to meet you, it is just a matter of thought. Let's not talk about the small talk first. Take out your thing first," Elder One said. Swishaoduo nodded and conjured the Void Destruction Pagoda. This thing had already become one with Swishaoduo's spirit, and there was no distinction between them. It was true that a magic treasure would appear immediately with a thought. It is indeed the prototype of a spirit treasure. It is really a good treasure. Elder Wan's face was full of kindness, and he praised with a smile. Then, he entered the Void Destruction Pagoda with Swishaoduo. The moment he entered, his body suddenly stiffened. Even with his heaven-defying cultivation, he was unable to control himself in that instant of rigidity. His self-restraint that spanned millions of years, and his state of mind that was originally as immovable as a mountain, all fell apart at this moment. His body stiffened and trembled, and his two eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. What did he see? What did he see? Chapter 1033. Wan Minxing couldn't believe what he was seeing. Just as he entered, a golden light flashed in front of him. Xiao flew up from the ground, circled around Wan Minxing quickly, and then stopped in front of Wan Minxing's eyes. She looked at Wan Minxing with her round eyes, full of confusion and a rare sense of intimacy. Xiao's little heart was a little confused. She seemed to feel that. This white-bearded old man was quite nice, kind, and likable. From the bottom of her heart, she felt a little close. Chirp, chirp. Xiao's eyes wandered. She hesitated, flapped her wings, and flew up again. She looked at Wan Minxing from above, then flew down and squatted on the ground. She looked at Wan Minxing from below, and then turned to look at his back. Finally, she returned to Wan Minxing's eyes again, and stopped in midair to look at him. Chirp, chirp. Xiao called out hesitantly. He didn't know her at all. But why did she feel a little close? This made Jin Jinwu a little confused. Whoosh. Xiao flapped her wings and flew to Wan Minxing's shoulder. She tried to jump on her 3 legs uneasily, and then seemed to feel that it was very safe here. Then she squatted down on Wan Minxing's shoulder, stuffed her head under her wings, and began to nap. Wan Minxing looked at Xiao in shock. Xiaoduo also looked at Xiao in a daze. Except for himself, he had never seen Xiao so affectionate to anyone. She didn't even say hello to her mama, and directly landed on Wan Minxing's shoulder? Did she not see the old when there was a new person? She would be caught, hung up, and spanked. Wan Minxing suddenly turned his head and stared at Xiaoduo with his deep eyes. He lowered his voice, full of shock and uncertainty, and said, Seventh prince. Xiaoduo rolled his eyes and desperately denied. What 7th prince? She's clearly my baby. As if to prove Xiaoduo's words, Xiao raised her head and called sweetly, Mama! Hey! Xiaoduo beamed with delight. So it turned out that he didn't forget about his mama, just because there was a newcomer. He was greatly comforted. Wan Minxing's originally stiff body became even stiffer. His face, which had never changed for millions of years, was now twitching. The muscles on his face were twitching and cramping. This old man must be senile. His eyesight had deteriorated to such an extent that even his hearing had deteriorated. Or perhaps this was actually an illusion? This should be an illusion, right? This can't be real, right? Instantly, a disdainful divine sense came from the sky. This divine sense clearly conveyed a message. Is this old man an idiot? Why did he come in? You're just pretending to be a fool? Wan Minxing stiffly raised his head, his eyes bright. On the other side, a wisp of red light was flying back and forth in the sky. It was filled with the aura of a ruler and the might of an emperor. A pure and primitive demonic aura surged in the air. Jie! Wan Minxing suddenly opened his mouth wide. He couldn't close his eyes. Wasn't this the Wahuang sword? Her Majesty Empress Wa's sword? Why was it here? The 7th prince was here, and so was the Wahuang sword. It was already nonsense that his eyesight was blurred. He shouldn't have made a mistake even once, let alone twice in a row. Then this place was definitely not an illusion. An illusion couldn't be so realistic. Unless it was an illusion set up by a saint. It couldn't make a half-saint like him fall deeply into it and feel lost without realizing it. But could Xiaoduo be a saint? At least not now. Wan Minxing looked into the distance and saw 2 Providence mountains standing opposite each other in the distance. Between them was an almost boundless space in the distant domain. Wan Minxing only felt endless chaos in his mind, and he couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. His body swayed, and he held his forehead with his hand. I want to be alone. Xiaoduo was shocked. He hurriedly pulled out a chair and helped Wan Minxing sit down. After Wan Minxing sat down, he still felt that the world was spinning, and he gasped for breath. There was no other reason, but that it was too shocking. How could he be wrong about the Demon Emperor's 7th prince, who had once hidden under his branches and leaves for a long time, and escaped with his life? How could he not recognize the Wahuang sword, who had once commanded all the demons in the world, and where the sword pointed, Hundreds of millions of demons would advance one after another without returning. Back then, when the Empress appeared, thousands of mountains bowed their heads and thousands of rivers worshipped her. None of the billions of demons dared to move. All the sovereigns respected her, and all the sovereigns of the various races bowed their heads. When the Wahuang sword appeared, the mountains and rivers moved, and the sky turned red. Back then, when the Empress appeared and moved forward in her imperial carriage, the Wahuang sword opened the way in front. The sword light illuminated the 9 heavens, and it was glorious and unparalleled. Behind her, there were countless demons who were boundless and excited, and they seemed to drown the world together with her. It was only when the Empress' interest waned, and she didn't want to play anymore, that she disappeared in a flash. Only then did the world regain its peace. How awe-inspiring was that? How graceful and noble was that, with the supreme demeanor of a sovereign descending to the world. Even the 2 demon emperors had to bow their heads when they saw the Empress of Niwa. Even the 3 pure ones had to treat her with respect. The people of the world were a little terrified. Now, the demon emperor's 7th prince was here. The Empress Wahuang sword was also here. This Zhuoxiaodua was even sent here by Zuwu Zhurong. What exactly was this kid's background? Although he had heaven-defying and peerless luck, wasn't it too complicated? The Wahuang sword's consciousness was transmitted into Zhuoxiaodua's spiritual consciousness with disdain. Isn't this that grasshopper? How come you're so popular now? There was a hint of arrogance in its tone. Zhuoxiaodua rolled his eyes and said angrily, "Who told you to come out and scare people? You're just a lousy sword. What are you showing off for? Go do what you're supposed to do." The Wahuang sword snorted resentfully and said, "What kind of world is this? A lousy blade of grass can become a half-saint. How did it obtain the immeasurable merit? Don't tell me it's planning to become a saint through merit. What kind of world is this? Becoming a saint through merit is hard to come by. It's easy to disperse and disappear. It's almost the most difficult way to become a saint. Those without great luck can't get it. Moreover, their combat strength is only SOSO. Even if they really become a saint, they'll at most have the combat strength of a sage to be. But how can a lousy blade of grass do that? What kind of world is this?" The Wahuang sword muttered to itself, feeling very indignant. However, he kept repeating the words "what kind of world is this" dozens of times, before he finally shut his mouth in resentment. He was so indignant that he wanted nothing more than to take over. His indignation simply overflowed into the sky. Then with a whoosh, it flew back to the top of the demon emperor's chi meridian. It emitted endless shadows and slowly descended majestically. For a moment, there seemed to be countless golden lights descending from the sky. A sword was right in the middle, infinitely majestic and solemn. Clang! It was inserted into the top of the mountain. The sword emitted tens of thousands of rays of light, illuminating the world. Well, in short, it was using all its strength regardless of the cost, to pretend to be an incomparably high-end and classy poser. Wan Minxing gasped for breath for a long time before he finally reacted. He stood up and walked forward quickly, bowing respectfully to the Wahuang sword. "Grasshopper greets Lord 13. Greetings to Her Majesty Empress Hua." Clang! The Wahuang sword let out a sword cry that shook the world. It replied in the simplest way, and then ignored Wan Minxing. And it was a little displeased. "I hate people calling me Lord 13 the most. In the Book of Divine Weapons, I'm ranked last. That every time I'm called Lord 13, I'll think of those guys in front of me, that it really pisses me off." This despicable grasshopper still deliberately mentioned it. "It's obviously mocking me. Humph. If I'm at my peak, I'll immediately go down and chop this grasshopper to eat." Of course, he was just thinking about it. In a martial artist's true cultivation, the one who reached the top was first. Elder One was respectful to him, because of his past identity, and his respect for Lady Niwa. With his strength that had just recovered, if he really dared to cause trouble, Elder One would definitely beat him up over and over again. Therefore, after the Wahuang sword acted pretentiously, it didn't dare to move anymore. It couldn't let others see through it. Wan Minxing stood up. Xiao had stayed on his shoulder for long enough. It rubbed its small sharp beak on Wan Minxing's face intimately twice. Then, it flapped its wings and flew into the sky to play. With a whoosh, it turned into a grand sun true fire, jumping back and forth in the sky. It could be seen that Xiao was very excited. Didn't you see how it was dancing with joy? Although it didn't know why it was so excited, it was just happy. When it was happy, it naturally wanted to run like crazy to vent. Therefore it jumped back and forth endlessly. Wan Minxing stood there in a daze, looking at the two mountain ranges of Providence. He looked at the boundless expanse, watched Xiao fly since childhood, and watched the Wahuang sword stand proudly in the wind. Finally, he let out a long breath. He muttered, could it be that the demons Lady Niwa and the Wu people set up a trap long ago? Suddenly, he felt extremely shocked in his heart. When he turned to look at Zhou Xiaoduo, his gaze suddenly became much deeper. Zhou Xiaoduo looked innocent. Elder Wan, what do you think of my space? Good. Excellent. Great. Wan Minxing praised it 3 times. He took a deep breath and said, your space. Although at the beginning of the structure, it's not in the true flow and is extremely shallow, with the refinement of your own divine soul and the combination of so much earth qi and dragon qi, it has reached the point of perfect integration. It's very close to the state when the sky was first opened. It already has the basic laws. It's far above ordinary blessed lands and grotto heavens. Good, it's indeed good. It's really good. Wan Minxing finally came to his senses and said, let me perfect the last flaw for you. Before he finished speaking, a white light suddenly rose from his qi and shot straight into the sky. This sudden white light was filled with a kind of sacred aura. It was brilliant and glorious, shooting straight into the sky. Zhou Xiaoduo's mind was shaken. This aura was very neutral and peaceful, but it was also very holy and glorious. This aura seemed to have purified the entire space of the Tower of Annihilation. He had never seen the power of the divine path. Although it was his first time seeing it today, he instinctively recognized it in his heart. This was the power of the divine path. Chapter 1034. The power of the people's livelihood was filled with compassion, kindness, vitality, gentleness, and far too much positive energy. This power was not a combat power. Although it was powerful, it was not suitable for combat. However, it was the most comforting and reassuring power attribute. The white light soared into the sky, and then turned into a dome at an unknown height. It slowly descended along the outer wall of the Tower of Annihilation. The white light from Wan Minxing's side continued to soar into the sky, and then it continued to descend. Zhou Xiaoduo clearly felt that the Tower of Annihilation was undergoing a huge change, but he could not tell what the specific change was. The 2 mountains of fortune also seemed to be changing, and they gradually shrank inch by inch. After a while, traces of purple qi appeared in the sky, but they disappeared in an instant and could not be seen. After about 10 minutes, Wan Minxing finally stopped, and the white light disappeared. Zhou Xiaoduo felt Xiaolong was so excited that he almost wanted to roll over and howl with joy. What's wrong? Zhou Xiaoduo asked in his divine mind. The Tower of Annihilation has been reborn. It's really been reborn. Xiaolong was so excited that he could not speak properly. The power of the divine path has strengthened the foundation of the Tower of Annihilation. The Tower of Annihilation now has the foundation of immortality. I just need to slowly perfect it bit by bit, and this will be a real world. Zhou Xiaoduo said, what's the use of this? How much better is it than before? What's the use? It's very useful. Xiaolong said, this is not a matter of how much but a matter of great opportunity. This is a great opportunity. Boss, why are you so stingy? Zhou Xiaoduo coughed. Oh, look at how excited you are. I didn't take it to heart at all. Why are you being stingy? Xiaolong was speechless. Boss, I believe you didn't take it to heart. It's just that you don't understand, so you didn't take it to heart. If you understood, you would know what a rare opportunity it is today, and what a great favor you have received. What I did just now was equivalent to helping you create the world, laying the foundation of creation. Do you know? Do you know? Sigh, you don't know. Although nothing seemed to have changed on the surface, how could a world that could collapse at any time be the same as a world that could last forever? It wasn't just the difference between heaven and earth. It was the difference between heaven and earth. They were on completely different planes. Especially after being perfected by Elder Wan, No matter how powerful the person was, as long as he hid in the Tower of Void Destruction, he would not be able to detect his presence, as long as he did not have the guidance of his blood essence and soul. Oh, the ignorant are truly fearless. Xiao Long was completely speechless. That kind of excitement that filled his entire soul was actually beaten down by Zhuxiaoduo's attitude, and couldn't get any more excited. It couldn't be helped. This boss's eyesight was too shallow. How embarrassing that their eyes were filled with sympathy as they looked at Wan Minsheng. Old man, you've put in so much effort, but my boss doesn't even know what you're doing. There's a saying, charming eyes are for the blind. That's what you're doing now. It was a textbook interpretation of a common saying. Nothing could be more tragic than this. After making such a big fuss, Wan Minsheng, who had contributed so much, could not help but feel a little tired, even though his cultivation was extremely high. He sat on the chair to rest for a while, and used his divine thoughts to feel the changes in the Tower of Void Destruction. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "Okay, basically everything that should be perfected can be achieved. The effect that I said can only be better in the future." "Elder Wan, you've worked hard," Zhuxiaoduo said attentively. It's my pleasure, it's my pleasure." Wan Minsheng felt that this space was even better than what he had expected at first. There were even some mysteries that even he could not see through. However, those were Zhuxiaoduo's privacy, so he naturally would not rashly expose it. And now, there was a faint feeling of awe in his heart, so it was not appropriate for him to ask. To be honest, if Wan Minsheng had known that there were three-legged golden crows and Wahuang's sword in it, he would not have even repaired the Tower of Void Destruction. He did not even dare to mention it. If he messed up the deployment of the Demon Emperor and the plan of Her Majesty Empress, how could he bear it? But now that he had started it, he could only bite the bullet and continue with it. Xiao Long now knew that the person who came was a super powerful person that he had never seen before. He was afraid of being captured, so even though he was excited, he did not dare to show up. Not to mention that his excitement had been reduced by more than half by Zhuxiaoduo's blow. After a short rest, when Zhuxiaoduo was about to invite Wan Minsheng out, Wan Minsheng suddenly said, "Open the door." "Ah." Zhuxiaoduo obeyed, and opened the door of the Tower of Void Destruction. Wan Minsheng took a deep breath and waved his right hand. A whirlwind suddenly surged, and then, a brilliant green light suddenly bloomed above the Tower of Void Destruction. As the green light continued to bloom, the rich vitality of the entire heavenly spirit forest surged into the space of the Tower of Void Destruction with the force of a tsunami. At this stage, the Tower of Void Destruction was not small, but compared to the vast heavenly spirit forest, it was not even 1% of it. The green vitality in front of him was so dense that it almost condensed into a substance. It was like a huge green dragon that rushed in, shaking its head and wagging its tail. It quickly spread around the Tower of Void Destruction. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The vitality was unprecedentedly pervasive. Then, Wan Minsheng placed a seed of vitality in the air, and further gathered the vitality, causing the vitality to surge faster and faster. And as the vitality in the Tower of Void Destruction became richer and richer, it became fresher and fresher. Finally Xiao Long could no longer contain the excitement in his heart. With a loud roar, his huge body rose into the air and greeted the green dragon in the air. And then he immediately took over the control. As Xiao Long took over, he deliberately controlled the dragon so that the vitality in the Tower of Void Destruction spread in an extremely uniform way. With Xiao Long's organized and regulated method, more and more vitality entered the Tower of Void Destruction, and gradually, a magnificent sea of vitality appeared in the Tower of Void Destruction. Burp. Looking at the sudden appearance of a green dragon in the air, Wan Minsheng was stunned again, and he subconsciously opened his eyes wide. Originally, he had tried his best to overestimate Zhuxiaoduo, but he realized that he still did not really understand this little guy. This little guy, time and time again, opened his eyes, like the seventh prince of the demon clan, like the Wahuang sword, and now that was clearly the creator dragon. If Xiaolong maintained his original completely illusory form, no one would be able to see him. Even Elder One might be able to sense his existence, but he wouldn't be able to see through his roots. However, at this moment, after Xiaolong merged with the abundant green vitality, he appeared in front of everyone in a real state. With color, it was simply too eye-catching. A huge green dragon, with its head and eyes, scales and claws flying, was rolling in the air in high spirits. Wan Minxing was not blind. How could he not see it? This was a little ridiculous. No, not a little ridiculous, but too ridiculous. If Zhao's three-legged golden crow was the scheme of the demon clan, Zhu Wu's inheritance was the scheme of the Wu people, and the Huahuang sword was the chess piece of the empress, then what about the creator dragon? Could it be the heavenly axioms arrangement? Crack! Wan Minxing shut his mouth, lowered his head, and a trace of heartfelt horror flashed in his eyes. It seemed that the situation was still beyond his expectations. He originally planned to retreat when the vitality in the space of the Tower of Emptiness reached a certain level, leaving the seed of vitality here. It would naturally continue to emit vitality slowly consume it, and finally form a kind of balanced up. But after seeing Xiaolong, he silently changed his original intention and did not stop pouring vitality. Continuous, endless vitality from the outside was let in without interruption. The situation in front of him continued, and Zhuo Xiaoduo also sensed that the vitality in the Tower of Emptiness was now thicker than the density in the small house outside. Moreover, it was still pouring in without any signs of slowing down. Elder Wan, it's about time. It's okay. I have a lot of this. Since you have a use for it here, just take it. Wan Minxing had no intention of stopping. He only knew one thing. In his life, perhaps, there was only one chance to make this kid in front of him owe him a favor. Since that was the case, then he would let him owe as much as he could. Now the more he contributed, the better. Only with effort could there be a return. If he could make this guy feel embarrassed and unable to bear it, that would be even better. It would be best if Zhuo Xiaoduo himself felt very embarrassed. That would be great. Wan Minxing thought too much. Zhuo Xiaoduo was good at everything, but something like being embarrassed had really never happened to him. That even if he was like Elder Wan, he might feel grateful and a little embarrassed, but it was hard to say what he would think later. After all, someone was a real Pichio, the kind that only ate and did not shit. The vitality in the Tower of Emptiness was so dense that it made people's hair stand on end. Bai and Jiao, who were originally hiding in the spiritual sense space, could not bear it anymore. There was so much delicious food outside. They wanted to eat. Mama, we want to go out. Bai and Jiao were very clear about their identities. They knew that once they came out, they would definitely cause a new round of sensation. In the eyes of those who knew what they were, there was no doubt that they would be the root of a disaster. But the vitality outside was really too tempting. It was different from what they belonged to. It could be said that it was completely different. The two of them were the ancestors of vitality, while the one outside belonged to the ancestors of the mortal world's vitality. There was almost an essential difference between the two, but they still belonged to vitality. If the two sides were neutralized, the two little guys could use this to achieve great improvement and change. How could they not be tempted? But the two little guys knew how powerful it was, so they did not act on their own. Instead, they begged Zhuo Xiaoduo. That pitiful voice was pleading to Zhuo Xiaoduo. It was really indescribable and pitiful. Zhuo Xiaoduo's heart melted in an instant. Go out, it's okay. Elder Wan is a really good person. Chapter 1035. Zhuo Xiaoduo really didn't feel threatened by Wan Minxing. Zhuo Xiaoduo even felt close to Wan Minxing from the bottom of his heart. He was very relaxed. This was also the first time in history that Zhuo Xiaoduo recognized and trusted someone other than his parents and sister Nian in such a short period of time. The only one. Even Li Chenglong, Long Yusheng, and the others took much longer than this. Therefore, when faced with the request of the two Calabash children, he agreed almost immediately. After receiving Zhuo Xiaoduo's permission, Bai and Jiao both cheered. Let's go out and play. Thank you, Mom. The two little guys' voices were crisp and sweet. They were indescribably happy. They somersaulted a few times in the divine sense space, and then rushed out eagerly. Therefore, In the extremely shocked eyes of Wan Minsheng, he saw two little guys suddenly appear on top of Zhuoxiao's head. Round and round those were. Two calabashes. Yes, calabashes. Calabashes. I am Chow Calabash. Suddenly, Wan Minsheng thought of something and his eyes widened. His eyes were full of disbelief and incredulity. A rush of blood suddenly rushed to his head. In an instant, his face was flushed red, as if he was drunk. He didn't even blink his eyes. Even his breathing had completely stopped. In his mind, in a blank, there was lightning and thunder. The sky turned upside down. The stars exploded. The sun and the moon dimmed. 2 calabashes. One was white, crystal clear, and filled with a kind of soft and gentle white. At first glance, it made people feel that it was extremely clean and elegant. The other was black, shiny and transparent. It was a kind of extreme introverted, and filled with a profound atmosphere. Both calabashes were very small and very tender. It gave people the feeling that these two calabashes were not fully grown yet. That was probably the feeling. As the two calabashes floated out, they happily somersaulted in the air, chasing each other and laughing occasionally. That kind of happiness, that kind of freedom, that kind of excitement, actually affected Wan Minsheng's state of mind. At this moment, Wan Minsheng's eyes were the largest they had ever been. They were shocked again and again, but they never thought that there would be such a huge shock at the end. At this moment, the shock in his heart had reached a point where he could not control it at all. He couldn't help but take 2 steps forward, looking at the 2 gourds in the air, which were swallowing and playing in the boundless life force. He said in a weird voice, "Is that the number 1 treasure of the prehistorical era? Innate spirit root bottle gourd? How could this be? How is this possible?" Zhuoxiaoduo was puzzled. "Master Wan, what's wrong? These 2, that gourd is yours." Wan Minsheng pointed at Bai and Jiao with a trembling finger. His eyes were bloodshot. It was as if he had seen something unbelievable happen right before his eyes. If one were to describe it, it would be a modern man who saw someone who had died with his own eyes suddenly walk over to talk to him in broad daylight. It was probably the feeling of seeing a ghost in broad daylight. Before Zhuoxiaoduo could answer, they heard Bai's tender voice. "Mommy, I'm so happy today. Come and play with us too." Zhuoxiaoduo smiled happily. "You two play first. Mommy has something to do." "Okay." Bai and Jiao answered crisply. Then, the 2 calabashes flew freely in the air. They were too happy, too comfortable, too happy. Completely different, but extremely pure life force emerged from Bai and Jiao's bodies. Then, the life force in this space was swallowed by the 2 calabashes. At the side, Xiaolong was so excited that he was trembling all over. Oh, this is great. This time, he had truly struck gold. This was an unprecedented combination of heaven and earth. It was truly unprecedented in history. Even though the great god of creation, Pangu, sacrificed everything in exchange for this vast world outside, it was still far from achieving the miraculous combination of heaven and earth, and the fusion of life force. No, this kind of situation, no matter which world it was, did not have such a miraculous creation. This was because heaven and earth could only be combined in a state of chaos, and there were no living beings in that state. But this space of his own had achieved it. From the beginning to the end, this space had been controlled by someone. And before everything had begun, there was already the creator dragon. Before heaven and earth were developed, there was already a huge amount of life force and fate. And now, with the addition of the Khanate Calabash, there was an innate life force. Originally, Xiaolong thought that this kind of treatment was already unprecedented, and there was no comparison in all the 3,000 worlds. However, he had never thought that Zhuoxiaoduo would be chosen by Zhu Rong ancestral magus to be his successor, and that he would be thrown into the territory of a pre-saint who had saved the world. Xiaolong felt like his heart was about to explode from the ecstasy. Fortunately, he was just an illusion, a dragon of fate. If he had a real body, his dragon heart would have exploded long ago. He was so excited that he could not be any more excited. If Xiaolong was as ecstatic as he was, then Wan Minsheng was as shocked as he was. He clutched his chest and slowly sat down on the chair, panting heavily like a bellows. His eyes were round and straight, staring at Bai and Jiao in the sky. What was going on? Khanate bottle gourds. Weren't there only 7 of them? And didn't those 7 already have owners? It was publicly acknowledged that Khanate spirit roots existed before the heavens were created, and after 1,000,000,000,000 years of nurturing, there were only 7 bottle gourds. There were only 7. There couldn't be more. And it was said that these 7 bottle gourds, to a certain extent, were the same number as the 7 saints of the primordial era. There couldn't be more. Why? Why were there 2 more now? These 2, one white and one black, were never seen before? Were they newly born? This was completely impossible. Moreover, even if the Khanate bottle gourd vine sprouted and produced 2 more bottle gourds, Wan Mingxing would not be shocked to such an extent. But why were these 2 bottle gourds called Zuoshaoduo Mama? The more he thought about it, the more terrifying it became. In Elder Wan's opinion, the only possibility was that the bottle gourd vine had seen Zuoshaoduo. However, when it saw Zuoshaoduo, it was much earlier than him. At that time, these 2 little bottle gourds had not yet grown up. However, the bottle gourd vine had already seen Zuoshaoduo's soaring providence. Then, the bottle gourd vine did not want to miss this opportunity, so it paid a huge price and gave its children to Zuoshaoduo to raise. However, what kind of opportunity, what kind of providence, and what kind of coincidence could make the bottle gourd vine willingly hand over its children? Those were 2 children who were still ignorant, who had not grown up, and who did not know any better. What kind of opportunity could make a mother hand over her 2 or 3-year-old children to be raised by someone else? And it was not a situation where she could not afford to raise them. Even if she was the richest person in the continent and the strongest person in the continent, such a mother, who was at the peak of the continent in terms of martial strength, wealth, and reputation, was willing to hand over her children to a young man who was nothing to raise. What did this mean? This was truly frightening to think about. This request was even more important than the one he had made today. It was definitely not the slightest bit inferior. Then he thought. The creator dragon, the small world that had already taken shape. The Wahuang sword was actually guarding here. The 7th prince of the demon emperor called Zuoshaoduo Mama. The 2 Khanate bottle gourds also called Zuoshaoduo Mama. All of this was abnormal, too abnormal. Hiss. Wan Mingxing suddenly realized that the investment he made today, and the promise he received must be the most correct decision in his life. Unbeknownst to him, he was hugging a leg that couldn't be any thicker than this. At this moment, Wan Mingxing suddenly felt a sense of regret. He regretted his actions. He should not have made that karma agreement with Zuoshaoduo. After making the karma agreement, as long as Zuoshaoduo reached the agreement, then the karma would be gone, and the favor would also end cleanly at that time. But if he did not make the agreement, and just made friends, the spirit clan would probably get much more than what they agreed on in the future. Because although Zuoshaoduo's temperament was weird, stingy, eccentric, and sometimes made people want to slap him to death. But this guy was a person who valued friendship. In Zuoshaoduo's heart, friendship was definitely more important than the promise of karma. He had miscalculated. Wan Mingxing sighed softly, only feeling countless emotions rolling in his heart. For a moment he did not know what he was thinking. The Wahuang sword flew back and forth in the air. The 3-legged golden crow flew in the air to its heart's content. One moment it turned into a ball of flame, and the next moment it circled in the air. A green dragon was shaking its head and wagging its tail. 2 little bottle gourds were playing, shaking their heads happily. Today in the Void Extermination Pagoda, it was like a New Year's wedding. All kinds of happy events were gathered together. It was unprecedentedly lively. Zuoshaoduo was also exultant. Only Wan Mingxing, the person who had made the biggest contribution to this happy event, was stunned from the beginning to the end. He only felt that his heart was filled with blood time and time again, hovering on the edge of exploding again and again. Until he came out of the Void Extermination Pagoda, Wan Mingxing was still in a daze. His face was shocked to the point of numbness, and the state of being in a daze did not go away for a long time. His state of mind that had been tempered for millions of years, as still as a mountain, could not be calmed down at this moment. Elder Wan? Elder Wan? Zhuo called out a few times. Chapter 1036. Oh, it's okay, it's okay. Wan Minxing felt that he must have no demeanor at this moment. The demeanor and grace that he had accumulated for millions of years were all gone. But at this moment, he couldn't care about anything. Because until now, he still felt that his eyes were dazzled by the colorful lights in front of him. He was almost infatuated and turned inside out. He thought deeper in an instant. Since the two black and white gourds were here, and they were so dependent on Zhuo, it could only prove that. Or it could be said that the source of the dominator of heaven and earth had recognized Zhuo's fate. That was why he entrusted the two gourds to Zhuo. Looking at Zhuo's attitude towards the two small gourds, and even towards the three-legged golden crow, it was a sincere affection from the bottom of his heart. This was the level of the dominator of heaven and earth's chess pieces. Imperceptibly, they would be bound to you by karma that could no longer be severed. Compared to forcefully binding others, this method of manipulation was extremely costly, but the effect was minimal. The difference between the two was simply too great. Ashamed of his inferiority. What should we do next? Wan Minxing was still thinking about the two gourds, the Wahuang sword, the three-legged golden crow, and the creator dragon. These were the chess pieces set up by the mighty dot so much, so that his words were a little light. Of course, we should continue to practice the primordial fire technique. Zhuo said. Elder Wan, let's take a break and then start. We still have to go to the Tower of Annihilation to practice. The flow of time inside is quite different from the outside world. The current Tower of Annihilation had been optimized by Wan Minxing, and its performance could be said to have improved further. Of course, the optimization this time was more in the aspect of concealment, and the progress in other aspects was relatively limited. However, after Xiaolong's integration of statistics, now 1 day outside was equivalent to 90 days in the Tower of Annihilation, which was a full 3 months. And such a terrifying progress was relatively limited in other aspects. That's what Zhuo was trying to figure it out, as he waved his hands and lifted his feet. He imagined integrating it into his moves, and waited for Xiaolong to integrate the time and space of the Tower of Annihilation. Wan Minxing leaned back in his chair quietly. His face looked calm, as if he was taking a nap. Nothing was bothering him. But in reality, his heart was in a perilous situation, and he was trying his best to calm himself down. Just relying on 1,000,000 years of mental stability was no longer enough. The more Zhuo gestured, the more he felt like he had gained something, but lacked a flash of insight. And at this moment, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the boundless sky. Then thunder rumbled from afar, rolling back and forth in the sky. A deafening clap of thunder rang out, startling Wan Minxing out of his thoughts. He looked up in surprise. The tree leaves and branches that covered the entire sky sensed Wan Minxing's confusion and automatically scattered, revealing a patch of the sky. At this moment, dark clouds surged, covering the sky and covering the earth. Zhuo, who was still moving his arms and legs, felt a wave of enlightenment rise. It seemed that he had a new understanding of his hammering technique. An impulse arose in his heart, and he couldn't hold it back any longer. With a swoosh, he took out the 99 cat hammer from his space ring. Then he leaped into the air and smashed down with his hammer. Then, another hammer, another hammer, another hammer, another hammer. It felt more and more perfect. I'm too awesome. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Bai and Jiu cheered as they leaped out of the divine sense, turning into 2 streaks of light, one white and one black, that shot into the 2 hammers. For a moment, the white light and the black aura intertwined in the air. The energy of yin and yang surged endlessly in the air, and the gates of hell began to take shape. Thunderclaps continued to ring out in the sky. After a long while, an even louder explosion rang out. In reality, the shadows of 2 sledgehammers suddenly appeared in the sky, and then suddenly rushed down on their own. Zhuo was stunned. What's going on? What's going on? I'm just dancing with my hammers. You've already reached your limit by using wind and thunder in the sky. Why are you making a pair of hammers to match the situation? Are you kidding me? However, before he could think about it carefully, a pretty little girl in white appeared on the left hammer of the 99 cat hammer, and a chubby little boy in a doo-doo appeared on the right hammer. The two little guys giggled and suddenly looked up at the sky, opening their mouths at the same time. The two sledgehammer phantoms in the sky were originally rushing toward the 99 kitty hammer, but Little White and Little Geo opened their mouths and swallowed them into their stomachs. They were intercepted. Thunder roared in the sky as if it was angry. "This is for the hammers. Why are you swallowing it?" The shadows of the two gourds suddenly rushed out of the hammers. Two streaks of light, one white and one black, soared into the sky in an unprecedentedly arrogant and domineering manner, heading straight for the dark clouds in the sky. "Why are you striking thunder? You're so annoying. How dare you criticize us?" However, the heavenly wrath did not dare to offend them lightly. The boundless dark clouds in the sky immediately reacted. With a muffled boom, a bolt of lightning struck down, heading straight for the two little guys. All of this happened too suddenly. The two little guys challenged the heavenly wrath, and even approached the clouds on their own. Swordsmanship did not have time to react at all. Elder One finally reacted. However, even though his cultivation was amazing, he was not good at fighting. He could not react in time to such a sudden change. Seeing the lightning approaching the two little guys, he was already half a step too late to save them. Seeing the heavenly wrath and the lightning approaching, the Geo opened its mouth and swallowed the lightning into its stomach. Then it continued to rush up. Elder Wan, who was ready to help, and Swordsmanship, who had just reacted, were both dumbfounded. What kind of twist was this? That was the heavenly wrath, and it swallowed it. The two gourds rushed up to the sky aggressively. A strong wind suddenly rose, sweeping up the dust. With a whoosh, the dark clouds in the sky suddenly rose, and the wind grew stronger. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the sky became clear again. Only then did Little White and Little Geo land unwillingly. They let out a smug cry that said, "Don't run if you have the guts," showing off their arrogance and flaunting their might. Then with a whoosh, they went back into the 99 kitty hammer, digesting the essence of the two hammers and further merging with the 99 kitty hammer. This! Swordsmanship was so shocked that he did not know what to say. "My son and my daughter are so amazing. The lightning that represents the heavenly wrath was swallowed just like that?" On the other hand, Wan Minqing's expression returned to calmness. He was not surprised at all. After all, he had a cultivation of 1,000,000 years. In an instant he understood the reason. The heavenly wrath was incomplete, and the prehistoric spiritual treasure, the Khanate gourd, was a special existence like the illegitimate child of the heavenly wrath. Facing the incomplete aura of the heavenly wrath, not only would they not be afraid, but they would also feel a natural suppression. Everything happened so suddenly that it became a matter of life and death. Elder One did not have time to think carefully, so he wanted to come to their rescue. When Swordsmanship picked up the 99 kitty hammer again, he immediately felt that the hammer was different. It had a kind of aura, as heavy as a mountain, as heavy as a prison, and as ferocious to the extreme. It was as if a pair of weapons for battle had completely transformed into weapons for killing. Weapons of war and weapons of slaughter were of completely different natures. If it had not been baptized by the blood of countless souls, even if it was a top-grade divine weapon, it would not be born with such an aura. Casually picking it up, Swordsmanship could feel that if he used the 99 kitty hammer to use the 1,000-soul hammer in battle again, its power would be improved qualitatively. It was a transformation of a completely different level. "My young friend, from now on, this pair of hammers will be immortal." Wan Minqing stood aside, with deep worry and sorrow in his eyes. His eyes were fixed on the pair of hammers, but what he saw in his mind was the monstrous waves of blood that would be smashed by the hammers in the near future. Countless heroes and warriors of various clans would be turned into dead souls under this pair of hammers. "Elder Wan, what do you mean?" Swordsmanship humbly asked for advice. Before the two gourds entered, these two hammers were only lethal weapons in the human world. But after the two gourds were invested in, they were already divine weapons in the heavens, belonging to the level of spiritual treasures. They will grow with the growth of the gourds. It can even be said that when the two gourds were invested in, They were already natural spiritual treasures. Their foundation was solid, and they only needed to be polished for a long time. But this time, the hammer souls entered, and were refined by the two gourds at the first moment. It means that all the conditions are now met. Moreover, each of them has a quality beyond the established. In the future, this pair of hammers will not only be a top-grade natural spiritual treasure in the divine weapon ranking list, and their ranking will not be too far behind. Wan Minsheng said earnestly, "My young friend, innate spiritual treasures are otherworldly spiritual objects born from the creation of heaven and earth. They are the purest immortal objects in the world. But your pair of hammers, because of their special roots and various opportunities, have become immortal objects. At the same time, they possess the attributes of killing weapons. My young friend, I hope that when you use these killing weapons in the future, you will not act recklessly. You must always have compassion in your heart." Zhou Xiaoduo agreed and nodded vigorously, saying, "Yes, I often have mercy in my heart now. I always think that I can't leave my family alone. My parents are old and need me to take care of them. Nian Cat needs me even more, so I can't let anything happen to her. I have to kill all my enemies without leaving any consequences. That's the greatest mercy in my heart." Zhou Xiaoduo said sadly, "Now, I'm really doing things with a merciful heart. I'm fighting with a merciful heart. I pity the people of my world who have so many worries. I pity my enemies, who have such a long lifespan. The world is too bitter and difficult. It's better to send them away as soon as possible. That's my greatest merit." Wan Minsheng was dumbfounded. "You are so merciful, so you don't leave any consequences? Well, it seems that I don't really understand the meaning of the word mercy, that it's my lack of talent and knowledge." That looking at Zhou Xiaoduo's self-righteous face when he spoke, it was clear that he really thought so. This kind of self-righteousness was simply Wan Minsheng could not understand. The interior of the Tower of Annihilation has returned to normal. Shall we start practicing the elemental fire technique now? Zhou Xiaoduo was full of urgency. Okay. That. Cough cough. Chapter 1037. In the outside world, 3 days and 2 nights have passed. In this period of time, a total of 225 days had passed inside the Tower of Annihilation. Zhou Xiaoduo had raised his cultivation to the peak of the God reigning stage in one go, and suppressed it to the limit of 56 times. The second level of the Flaming Sun manual, Red Sun and Golden Sun, had not only reached the peak, but was also about to enter the third level, Clear Sky Great Sun. And the most gratifying thing was that the elemental fire technique could be considered to have reached the entry level. It was worthy of being Zhu Wu's natal cultivation technique. With Zhou Xiaoduo's peerless talent, and the fact that he was a cheater himself, it took him nearly a year to reach the entry level. Also, with the help of Wan Minsheng's protection, Zhou Xiaoduo successfully triggered the jade pendant and channeled it into his sea of consciousness. Unsurprisingly, the jade pendant contained Zhu Wu Zhurong's lifetime of cultivation and battle comprehension. Zhou Xiaoduo skimmed through it quickly and was greatly enlightened and shocked. It turned out that there was such a way of fighting. Now, Zhou Xiaoduo had begun to absorb the elemental fire. The elemental fire that had turned into a secret manual had been completely absorbed by Zhou Xiaoduo and turned into the foundation of the elemental fire technique. Then, he turned to absorbing the Zhurong primordial fire that had been preserved by Wan Minsheng for countless years. Even though the fire energy in Zhou Xiaoduo's body had accumulated to an unimaginable level, when faced with the Zhurong primordial fire, he still felt that he could not control it and could lose control at any time. Especially when his fire power encountered the Zhurong true fire. Not only did it fail to control the fire with fire, but it also instinctively shrank back, seeming to want to leap back into the Zhurong true fire. However, the Zhurong primordial fire was like the king of fire, burning neither fast nor slow. From beginning to end, it had a look of disdain, cold and reserved. Zhou Xiaoduo tried again and again, but he was still unable to fuse them. Fortunately, he had Elder Wan's guidance, and knew about Zhurong's true fire in advance. Although he failed again and again, he did not feel depressed. Failure is the mother of success. As long as you succeed in the end, who cares what happened in the past? The history books are written by the victors. Zhuo Xiaoduo secretly made up his mind. After I successfully assimilate and subdue the Zhu Rong Zhenhua, I will say that I have subdued the Zhu Rong Zhenhua in one go. As soon as the Zhu Rong Zhenhua sees my face, it will take the initiative to submit to me. It will be obedient and obedient. Let me do whatever I want, and show off my charisma as the chosen one. That what's the use of ignoring him now? At that time, I'll be able to use it however I want. Zhuo Xiaoduo made up his mind, and began cultivating again to increase his foundation, before continuing his attempts. So far, Zhuo Xiaoduo had tried more than 10 times. Finally, he felt that they were on par. However, the Zhu Rong Zhenhua was still unwilling to cooperate. It still waited arrogantly with no intention of compromising. Zhuo Xiaoduo felt a headache coming on. Elder Wan, this fire is too annoying, isn't it? I have clearly exceeded the cultivation level it needs. Zhuo Xiaoduo was very dissatisfied. It's like an ice beauty. It's clear that someone has met her requirements to find a partner, but she's still trying to be reserved. Wan Minxing smiled bitterly. Young friend, you should really feel lucky. An ice beauty naturally thinks highly of herself. If it weren't for your fire tribute cultivation and extraordinary attainments, as well as the foundation of the Yuanhua technique, your roots would be no different from the Zhu Rong Zhenhua. Even if you wanted to, you wouldn't be able to. Why do you think Zhu Rong is called the god of fire? Why is he the king of all fires and flames? Isn't it because of the Zhu Rong Zhenhua in his bones? As long as you absorb this Zhu Rong Zhenhua, it's the same as reaching the sky in one step. You can immediately build the Zhenhua foundation, form the Zhenhua embryo, and reach the starting point of Zhu Wu Zhu Rong. That's the beginning of the next generation of Zhu Wu. How can it be a small matter? How is it different from paving the way to the sky in one go? People should know how to be content. But this is too slow. Zhuo Xiaoduo was a little worried. As the saying goes, a woman is afraid of a man who pesters her. Sincerity can move metal and stone. You must be patient. Wan Minxing had been led astray by Zhuo Xiaoduo. He even said that a woman was afraid of a man who pesters her. Zhuo Xiaoduo faced the Zhenhua and threatened. But you've been together for more than 200 days, and you're still so reserved. You're obviously pretentious. I don't like it. Love will disappear. Student Zhenhua, if you continue to be so reserved, I won't be able to pursue you anymore. Zhu Rong's Zhenhua burned slowly, but he still ignored him. Zhuo Xiaoduo finally couldn't hold back and said angrily, Elder Wan, I don't think we can follow your method anymore. The progress is too slow. If we wait for him to become more approachable and condescending, how long will that take? Well, by the way, you said that you spent a lot of effort to separate this Zhenhua from his body. This is the kind of painstaking effort in your bones, right? It happens once in 12 years. If you use this method, it'll take you at least tens of thousands of times. No, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to fuck it. Zhuo Xiaoduo gritted his teeth and rubbed his palms. Whether it's willing or not, I'm going to fuck it. Wan Minxing was shocked. Don't force it. You have to be patient and influence it bit by bit. One day, it'll fall into your arms. You have the foundation of the Zhenhua, so it won't take that long. Your current progress. You'd better take a break. As he spoke, Zhuo Xiaoduo grabbed the slowly burning Zhu Rong's Zhenhua and said angrily, How long are you going to be reserved? I'm running out of patience. I'm going to force myself on you today. Zhu Rong's Zhenhua burned slowly, but he was still cold and reserved. Zhuo Xiaoduo was furious. Are you looking down on me? So the Zhenhua opened his mouth and swallowed Zhu Rong's Zhenhua. He really forced himself on Zhenhua. Zhenhua was swallowed in one gulp. Wan Minxing burped and widened his eyes. This kid is courting death. Awuh! Zhuo Xiaoduo let out a painful howl from his throat, but he kept his mouth shut. He used the primordial fire and true fire to forcefully compress it, and then drove it towards his dantian. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Zhuo Xiaoduo's head, hands, feet, facial orifices, and even his back began to emit flames. Plumes of black smoke rose from the countless pores on his body. However, he kept his mouth shut and gritted his teeth, refusing to let go. Wan Minxing was dumbfounded. This was the true fury of Zhu Rong. How could he be so reckless? Were they courting death? Once Zhu Rong's primordial fire was fully ignited, it would be an extreme eruption from within his body. His entire body would be incinerated by the primordial fire, and his soul would be completely destroyed. However, when he saw that Zhuxiaoduo's entire body was burning red, he knew that there was no turning back. He did not dare to disturb him, and could only continuously inject life force into Zhuxiaoduo to strengthen the vitality of his body and help suppress the primordial fire. To Wan Minxing's surprise, this ball of Zhu Rong's primordial fire only resisted slightly after being treated so rudely. Then, it followed Zhuxiaoduo's meridians and entered his dantian. That nothing out of the ordinary happened throughout the entire process. It obediently followed. Then, in his dantian, all the energy began to revolve around this ball of fire, and began to fuse and integrate into one. Wan Minxing watched with his mouth agape, at a loss of what to do. What was going on? Wasn't this too ridiculous? He did not know that Zhuxiaoduo was most afraid of death. He had always adhered to the principle of not fighting a battle, or taking risks that he was not confident in. It could be said that a gentleman would not stand under a collapsing wall. The reason why he was so reckless was because he had referred to Zhu Rong's lifetime of combat and cultivation experience, and concluded a principle. This Lord Zhu Rong's actions could be described with one word: reckless. No matter what was in front of him, no matter how strong the enemy was, no matter how many enemies there were, no matter whether he could defeat them or not, there was only one word to describe it: reckless. Who cares? If he could defeat them, he would fight. If he could not defeat them, he would fight even more. This was the kind of guy he was. He had been reckless his entire life. If you wanted to use gentle methods to slowly coax and influence the primordial fire inheritance left behind by such a person, although there was a possibility of success, at the very least, you would have to coax it for hundreds of thousands of years. Just like Elder One, who had been licking his boots for hundreds of millions of years. However, there was no one like Zhuxiaoduo who would directly cook the rice and force himself on the primordial fire before talking about the follow-up. As expected, as soon as it entered his throat, Zhuxiaoduo felt it. As expected, this was the case. Although he said no, in reality, he had already approved of it. He just stood there and did not take the initiative. After all, Zhuxiaoduo had the foundation of the primordial fire art and a fire tribute cultivation body. It was a perfect match for Zhu Rong's primordial fire. There was no better combination. On the surface, the two sides did not interfere with each other. However, in reality, they were already dry firewood and raging fire. They were only waiting for one side to take the initiative. Then, they would immediately become entangled in each other and hit it off. The cold and aloof demeanor would disappear in an instant and turn into lovey-dovey love. She lived a prosperous life. Although the worries of the people's livelihood were based on his experience, who said that experience was always right. In reality, if he really could not absorb it, Zhuxiaoduo would definitely spit it out immediately. Why would he take the huge risk of burning himself to ashes to absorb it? He even directly absorbed it into his dantian. Was that something that someone who was afraid of dying would do? That would be ridiculous. Under the dumbfounded gazes of the people, Zhuxiaoduo only took 1 day and 1 night to complete the fusion of the spiritual energy in his body and Zhu Rong's primordial fire. His red skin slowly returned to normal. However, his hair, the fine hairs on his body, and the other hairs on his lower body were all burned clean in the process. Even some skin flakes were rustling down. However, the skin that was exposed now had almost no pores on it. It was white with a tinge of red. It was different. It was indescribably likable and enviable. At this moment, even a lady with the best skin would feel inferior when compared to Zhuxiaoduo. However, Zhuxiaoduo was also cursing in his heart at this moment. It was not the first time that his entire body was shedding his hair. However, the shedding was so severe that he had been sitting cross-legged the whole time. All the hair on his body had turned into powder and landed in his crotch. Now there was a small handful of all kinds of powder in his crotch. As long as he stood up, the powder would definitely fall down his thighs and calves. This was unprecedented. Chapter 1038. Moreover, no one had seen him in a similar state before. Now that he was in the space of the Tower of Emptiness, people like Elder Wan, Huang Sword, Xiao Bai, and Jiu were all there. How could he let them see through his embarrassing image? How could he still have any face left? Zhou Xiaoduo practiced seriously, while looking at Wan Minxing out of the corner of his eye. It was said that when people got older, they would more or less have frequent urination. Why didn't Elder Wan say that he wanted to go to the toilet? What happened to the saying that old people were shrewd? At this moment, Wan Minxing looked at Zhou Xiaoduo with burning eyes, ready to help at any time. Even if the fusion was completed, the power of Zhu Rong's true fire was something that Wan Minxing would never forget in his life. Could Zhou Xiaoduo really digest it? Could he? He couldn't be careless. After a long time, Zhou Xiaoduo couldn't help but stand up quickly, stomping his feet, and saying, "I finally succeeded. It's so comfortable." Before his voice died away, he had already walked out. Behind him, Xiao stood on 3 legs where Zhou Xiaoduo originally stood, looking at the gray and white thing on the ground in a daze. What was this? It seemed to have fallen out of his mother's pants, that he tilted his head and looked at it for a long time. But he didn't understand. So he pecked it with his sharp beak. Ba ba ba. Xiao vomited crazily. Wan Minxing almost couldn't help laughing out loud. It was a saying that old people were shrewd. How could he not see what this kid was doing? This anecdote was enough for him to laugh for a while, or maybe for a lifetime. However, this little thing, this little embarrassment, was the most normal and common thing in the process of marrow cleansing, after a great improvement in cultivation. For example, when demons shed their skin and evolved, they directly left the entire surface of their body. In comparison, the little residue left by Zhou Xiaoduo was nothing. It was just a manifestation of his shallow cultivation and shallow knowledge. However, the matter of the 7th prince eating the residue could make him laugh for a while. Wan Minxing was really kind. He acted like he didn't see anything and just walked over. He even congratulated him happily and hid this joke in his heart. Zhou Xiaoduo heaved a sigh of relief. If it were Li Qinglong and the others, they would probably treat this as a joke and laugh at him for a few years, or even for half of their lives. Elder One is still the honest one. Touching his bald head, Zhou Xiaoduo was still feeling melancholy. Since the last time he had become bald while practicing martial arts, he had been bald from time to time. Moreover, his whole body was bald from head to toe. It had only just grown out. And all kinds of hair. Cough. It had only been a few days. And it was all gone. Zhou Xiaoduo's most melancholy was that even his eyebrows were gone. Of course, his eyelashes were gone as well. Needless to say, it was difficult to blink his eyes. Zhou Xiaoduo sighed from the bottom of his heart. This was probably the price of success, the trouble of growing up. I'm bald again. There's a description, like a peeled egg. That should be the description of me. Now, I'm completely Azure Dragon. Thinking of this, he suddenly had a thought. I wonder when Nyan Cat cleanses her meridians and marrows, that I can't think about it. I can't think about it. When the time comes, I'll find a chance to sneak a peek. Roar. Zhou Xiaoduo suddenly became happy. He squinted his eyes and smiled wretchedly. Next, Zhou Xiaoduo continued to stay in the space of the Tower of Annihilation, and continued to cultivate. At most, he would come out occasionally to chat with Wan Minxing and drink tea. With such a high efficiency of cultivation, his strength naturally continued to grow. Following the initiation of the elemental fire art, Zhou Xiaoduo discovered that the growth of his strength was like heaven and earth compared to before. It was impossible to compare. It was as if he was going up a level every few days. Coming out to drink Elder Wan's tea every day also made him feel more and more awake and clear-headed. What's more, Zhou Xiaoduo felt that his impending breakthrough in cultivation made his ambition grow bigger and bigger. On this day, he suddenly thought of something. It seemed that there was no better opportunity than now to integrate the creation plate. Through these few days of free time, Shuo suspected that Elder One might be the most powerful person in the astral souls at this time. Maybe even above the Flood Witch. Then, if he didn't take advantage of the fact that such a powerful person was beside him, when would he complete the integration? Elder One, you're experienced and knowledgeable. I have something that I need your help with. Shuo smiled flatteringly. What? This. Shuo took out a corner of the creation plate. I want to integrate this. The creation plate. Wan Mishing originally thought that he had been shocked to the extreme these few days, especially after the 2 gourds. What else could this kid have that could surprise him? It was already an innate spiritual treasure, so it had to be an upper-grade innate spiritual treasure. What else could there be with an upper-grade innate spiritual treasure, with the slaughter attribute? But the moment he looked at it, another unexpected thing appeared in front of him. There are 4 extremes in the sky, and the Azure Dragon guards the east. This is the Azure Dragon Sage's creation plate? You said you want to integrate it. Then you have the main plate of the creation plate with you. Are you serious? Wan Minqing's eyeballs were completely hanging out of their sockets. Yes, his original body was a spiritual plant, so it was understandable that some of his actions were beyond the scope of human abilities. Wasn't the main plate lost after the great god Pangu created the world? How did it fall on you? Wan Minqing wanted to roar. What was going on? Can someone tell me? What kind of luck did this kid have? To put it bluntly, if there were any news about the master plate, the Azure Dragon Sage, and the others wouldn't have had a chance to hold a corner of the creation plate. The Azure Dragon Sage, and the rest were the top experts in the world. But compared to the level of the creation plate, they were still 1 level lower. It should not have been their turn to hold such a creation plate. But everyone knew that after the great god Pangu created the world, the creation plate was already lost and incomplete. This was the same logic as the world being incomplete. Innate cardinal treasures were the limit of spirit treasures. Anything that surpassed the level of innate cardinal treasures could not exist, and even if it did, it would not be complete. When the Tao ancestor created the 3,000 great Taos, the creation plate was completely broken. After that, the various mighty figures knew that the 4 great demon guardians had obtained the fragments of the creation plate, but no one thought much of it. Even if the fragments were all present, the combined power of the 4 pieces was only at the level of an ordinary innate spiritual treasure. It could be completely resisted. It was completely harmless to the real mighty figures. In fact, if they snatched it, the other mighty figures would think that they were plotting something. The gains did not make up for the losses. With Wan Minqing's cultivation, he naturally understood this. But even if Wan Minqing smashed his soul, he would never have thought that at this moment, the legendary main plate of the creation plate, which even the Tao ancestor could not find, would appear right in front of him. This guy actually said that he wanted to merge with the creation plate. Since Shuo said that, apart from having a corner of the Azure Dragon Sage's creation plate, Shuo also had to have the main plate. This part could be said to be as obvious as a louse on a bald head. Wan Minqing clutched his chest, feeling as if he was about to have a heart attack. His mental demons rose and fell floating. There were several times when he wanted to raise his hand and kill Shuo to obtain such a huge treasure. Elder One, give me a straightforward answer. Can you merge it or not? The ignorant Shuo continued to ask. I can't merge it. Wan Minqing finally gasped for breath. He reached out and grabbed Shuo's shoulder, saying anxiously, You must remember that before you reach the Skysoar realm, you must never try to merge it. That's the danger of returning to the primal chaos in an instant. Do you understand? Shuo was startled. But my cultivation has improved greatly. This isn't a matter of cultivation. It's something that can only be merged after reaching a certain realm and resonating with the heavenly Tao to a certain extent. Wan Minqing felt extremely conflicted. This thing isn't something that can be merged at will. Also in the future, don't take it out casually. Do you understand? At the end of his words, There was a hint of ruthlessness in them. It wasn't that Elder One wasn't tempted by such a supreme treasure. Given his cultivation, if he could control the complete creation plate, he could go anywhere in the world. After all, he had cultivated for 1,000,000 years. His mind was pure and upright, and he had let go of his greed and obsession. I understand. Zhou Xiaoduo was startled by Elder One's reaction. Although he didn't understand the logic behind it, he instinctively believed Wan Minsheng. Wan Minsheng couldn't help but sigh. What was the path of fortune? This was the path of fortune. If Zhou Xiaoduo insisted on merging with the creation plate, Wan Minsheng could only stand guard for him. What awaited Zhou Xiaoduo would be the destruction of his physical body and soul, consigned to eternal damnation. However, he was very obedient and resisted. If this wasn't the path of fortune, then what was? This kid was really too careless. How could he take out something like this so casually? But he probably didn't know what it was. In that case, I'll break through to the profound returning realm first. Zhou Xiaoduo was very open-minded. If he couldn't merge with the creation plate, then so be it. Alright, I'll stand guard for you. Remember, this thing is not allowed to appear in front of anyone in the future. Wan Minsheng warned solemnly. Yes, I'll remember. Don't take it out in front of me. What? Seeing this thing, even a saint would turn into a bandit. Damn it. Zhou Xiaoduo was scared. A day later, Zhou Xiaoduo walked out of Wan Minsheng's courtyard quickly. After a few steps, he realized that the environment behind him had changed. When he looked back, he couldn't see where the small courtyard was anymore. Thank you. Zhou Xiaoduo bowed deeply in the direction of his memory, then turned around and strode away. Chapter 1039. On the last day, Zhou Xiaoduo successfully broke through to the mystic returning realm. Apart from the 50 caddies of spirit tea, Wan Minsheng also gave Zhou Xiaoduo a supreme-grade spirit spring, which he moved into the Void Extermination Pagoda. After all, there really wasn't any water-type phase in the Void Extermination Pagoda. Wan Minsheng asked Zhou Xiaoduo how many of the seeds of the wishful vines he wanted. Zhou Xiaoduo chuckled and said that he would not mind having more of such good things. Wan Minsheng waved his hand and gave him a sack full of them. Zhou Xiaoduo was stunned by Wan Minsheng's generosity. So many? This was at least hundreds of thousands. I mean, it's not that I wouldn't mind having more, but this was too much. Where do you want me to plant them? However, when he asked for them and Wan Minsheng gave them to him, he could still say, "It's too much, I don't want so much." Perhaps other people could do such a thing, but a real Pichio like Zhou Xiaoduo would never do it. He simply kept them in the Tower of Annihilation. Anyway, I have a world. What's there to be afraid of? Isn't it just hundreds of thousands of wishful vines? In short, Zhou Xiaoduo happily took them away. However, as soon as he left the small courtyard, the courtyard disappeared. Zhou Xiaoduo felt that he had taken too much. Was Wan Minsheng unhappy? But these were not what he wanted. He gave them to him voluntarily. He could not figure it out. It was better to keep moving forward. Little did he know that Wan Minsheng was standing in front of Zhou Xiaoduo's door at this moment, feeling sad. This old man had never experienced the pain of parting in his life. This time, Zhou Xiaoduo had stayed here for so long that the old man was already used to his company. In particular, Zhou Xiaoduo was usually smart and well-behaved. Wan Minsheng had long liked him to the bone. If it wasn't for this shred of kinship, Wan Minsheng might have really made a move that day. Therefore, the moment Zhou Xiaoduo left, Wan Minsheng felt a lump in his throat and almost cried. In order to quickly cut off this worry, he hurriedly activated the formation to cover himself and the small courtyard. At this moment, he was standing in front of Zhou Xiaoduo's door. He was so sad that his body was trembling, his eyes were red, and he was sighing deeply. I understand that you can't stay here for long. You still have a bright future ahead of you, but you can't control it. Wan Minsheng muttered to himself. I only hope that after you leave this place, you will be safe and your life will be smooth. Then he let out a long sigh, which lasted for a long time. What's the use of cultivation and mental state, even if you're promoted to the sage to be level? I still can't control my feelings. At this moment, Elder One was like an old man watching his grandson go out to work. Although he was reluctant, he still regained his rationality. When a child grew up, he had to go out. A baby eagle had to learn to fly by itself. Sigh. Wan Minqing's eyes were full of reluctance and longing as he looked at the facilities in Wuxia's room. His Taoist heart, which had been silent for millions of years, suddenly yearned for the outside world. It was unprecedentedly strong. Perhaps I really should go out and take a look. Wan Minqing muttered to himself. However, His Majesty Spirit Emperor said that he would never leave this place. Zhuo Xiaoduo, on the other hand, didn't feel too sad about parting. After all, in his opinion, Elder One wouldn't leave the heavenly spirit forest, and his cultivation was still so high. He just had to wait until he had the time to come and see him again. But now, he was really anxious to return home. He wanted to find a place with some signal and send a message to the outside world. I'm still alive. Don't worry. Especially to send a message to Sister Nian. Nian cat, I'm fine. Wait for me. The most important thing is that I'm already at the mystical returning realm. I can almost suppress you. Mystical returning realm. Roar. Roar. Along the way, the trees and grass in the forest all made way for him. There were even a few trees that turned into giants, standing there and waving their hands. This god of plague was finally gone. Zhuo Xiaoduo was unprecedentedly happy, but also extremely anxious. He stepped out of the boundary of the heavenly spirit forest as if he was flying. After walking a few thousand miles to the east, Zhuo Xiaoduo slowly found that the trees here were a little different. First it slowly thinned out. Then he found a bottomless ditch. After crossing this ditch, he saw that the trees became denser from sparse to dense again. However, the trees on the other side of the ditch clearly showed signs of darkening. They were overflowing with an indescribable aura, which made people feel uncomfortable from the inside out. Zhuo Xiaoduo instantly remembered the demonic aura he saw when he first came. Although it was slightly different from what he felt now, it was almost the same. The aura he felt in front of him seemed to be more evil, more brutal, and more unpleasant. As he walked forward, there were more and more snakes, insects, spiders, ants, flies, snakes, and centipedes under his feet. Occasionally, there were large groups of scorpions, holding their large pincers, rampaging in the dense grass. Then, there were centipedes that were half a meter, 1 meter, and even several meters long swimming past. Zhuo Xiaoduo was like a wisp of smoke, flashing through the forest and above the grass. He didn't dare to land on the ground. He knew very well that the direction he chose at random should be the territory of the demon clan in the heavenly spirit forest. Elder One had been in the heavenly spirit forest for 1,000,000 years, so there must be some super experts among the demons nearby. Even if he made another breakthrough, he still wouldn't dare to cause trouble. If he didn't have to, then it would be best if he didn't have to. The most important thing now was to go out, find a place with a signal, and send out the message quickly, so that his family wouldn't be worried. Then he would think of a way to sneak back from the UMNO alliance. That was the most important thing now. Even if others provoke me, I won't fight back. I won't fight back when they hit me, and I won't talk back when they scold me. My first priority is to go back safely. Oh yeah, let's do that. Zhuo Xiaoduo made up his mind and sneaked forward. At this moment inside the forest there were countless strange-looking guys, who were jumping for joy. The smell of good wine slowly filled the air, and many of them were splashed on the ground. The smell was naturally more pungent. The news that Mo Sergio brought back had been reported. Now the demon clan here was celebrating wildly. Although Wan Minqing said that they were not allowed to go out, and that they were not allowed to come back. But this also indirectly proved that the Great Era was about to arrive. The various clans were really about to return. In 3 years, at most 5 years, all the clans would be back. What a short period of time. We have been here for thousands of years, and our seniors have died batch after batch. The clans are getting stronger and stronger. And the original elders are now very powerful. What are we afraid of? When the Great Era comes, we will immediately kill our way out. To welcome the return of our clans, with cooperation from the inside and the outside. Isn't that a great achievement? Maybe the whole world will be under the rule of the demon clan. The news was confirmed, and that was the best thing. Seize the time to practice and improve. All the clans must do this. When our clans return from the mainland, everyone's cultivation must be higher than now. In the future, maybe we will all die, but it is also possible that we will become heroes and become the glory of the demon clan. We will trample the whole world under our feet. Let the glory of the demon ancestor shine on the whole world. Heaven and earth. Only the demon reigns supreme. Only the demon reigns supreme. Amidst the waves of cheers, everyone seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. At this moment the leaf swayed, and a black smoke suddenly rose from the ground. Then, he transformed into a strangely shaped demon, and whispered a few words to him. Human? Are you sure? From Elder Wan's side? Should be. Let's go and take a look. Do we need to report to the boss and the rest? No need. The boss was very angry during this period of time, and it was this news that made them happy. However, they immediately went in, and seemed to be dealing with something. It is said that the boss caught a human woman 2 days ago. Don't ask if you don't know. Yes, I am wrong. Let's go and take a look. Countless demons, in the direction of Zhuoshaoduo, screamed and roared, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Humans! Many demons were born in the demonic spirit forest, and had never seen a human in their entire lives. Now they were finally going to see a living one, so excited roar. It is said that human blood is unusually fresh and sweet. I don't know if it is true, but only one came. I don't know if it will be my turn to taste it. The demons swarmed. Zhuoshaoduo was fully focused, and continued to move forward cautiously, shuttling through the forest, flying at the lowest altitude. Since he knew that the demons also had strong masters, he did not dare to be rash, and flew at a high altitude. The boundless demonic aura in the sky was like a big net, directly covering the whole space. Of course, this was to defend against the high-altitude meteorites, but also to prevent the enemy from invading. Moreover, those who could set up spiritual senses in the sky were all big shots of a certain level. Zhuoshaoduo admitted that he could not afford to offend big shots of this level. Although my strength has improved greatly, and compared to when I was besieged and chased in the Red Sun Mountain range, my strength has improved by several times. But although at that time I was just a mere god reigning, and now I am a high and mighty mystic reigning, but I am still only invincible among the younger generation. I am still far from those old guys. Well, I seem to be invincible among the younger generation, and no one can defeat me, right? Then, what is the specific meaning of these days of improvement? Is it just for the promise with Sister Nian? If I can fulfill the promise, it is not bad. I have long wanted to fulfill it, even in my dreams. Dong dong clang. Nian cat, I am coming. Chapter 1040. But that was a matter for the future. Now to be safe, he chose to keep flying at a very low altitude in the forest, and continue to pass through. Zhuoshaoduo's plan could be said to be extremely wise. The kind of peerless experts that he needed to avoid. If they did not know about him beforehand and targeted him, they would not appear at such a height and on such a route. Therefore, as long as he moved fast enough, he would be able to pass them safely. Even if he encountered the demon clan unluckily, they were just some small fries at most. If there was a conflict, with Zhuoshaoduo's means, he could open a path in an instant and pass through directly. By the time the experts on the other side reacted, Zhuoshaoduo would be very likely to be far away, or even out of the demon clan's forest. After all, his speed was fast enough, and it didn't take him too much time to leave the heavenly spirit forest. The heavenly spirit forest, the demon spirit forest, and the demon spirit forest were the same size, so there shouldn't be a big difference between them. Zhuoshaoduo was as light as the wind, and as fast as lightning. Even though the forest in front of him was getting denser and denser, and the surrounding atmosphere was getting darker and gloomier, he was still calm and composed. He was even a little bit happy about the current atmosphere. The denser the area, the less people there were, and the safer he would be. Naturally, it was worth being happy about. However, the inexplicable, treacherous atmosphere around him was getting thicker and thicker. There seemed to be a commotion in the distance, that Zhuo snorted in his heart. Without saying a word, he launched the Tianyuan escape skill, and rushed forward at an unprecedented speed. Boom. In the air, a dense turbulence suddenly spread out. Zhuo, who was in the state of galloping, hit an invisible air shield head-on. His speed at the moment was the limit of his body's movement. It could be said that he was extremely fast. Coincidentally, his strength at the moment was also outstanding, and it was difficult for anyone at the same level to match him. With the combination of extreme speed and great strength, he broke the air shield in front of him immediately. No, it should be that it exploded directly. Under the impact, the entire chi barrier was unable to resist at all. It exploded like a bomb. Boom! Inexplicable and extremely unpleasant curses came from all directions. However, in front of Zhuo's eyes, it instantly changed its appearance. Beneath this layer of protection was an illusion array. The original purpose of this illusory formation was to cover everything inside. As long as the illusory formation was still there, it would be no different from the forest outside. However, Zhuo's sudden appearance caused a huge commotion. While countless people were cursing, there were also many people who jumped up in excitement. Got it! Got it! Ha ha ha! This method is indeed effective. At this moment, Zhuo's forehead was filled with black lines. Looking towards the source of the sound, he saw a few demons jumping and shouting. As expected, I knew it. With my spiritual sense, how could I be so careless as to bump into the barrier? Someone was definitely messing with me. Zhuo sighed as he looked at the excited crowd of demons surrounding him. How could he not know that today's matter would not be settled peacefully? He was destined to not be able to leave as smoothly as he had imagined. Everyone, do you understand? Zhuo cupped his fists, brimming with the demeanor of a refined gentleman, genial and amiable. Damn, why does this human speak the same language as us? Sigh, this is so strange, so strange. Damn. This human only has 2 eyes. How ugly. Look at me. I have 13 eyes. 2 noses. 7 ears. How handsome. Damn. I can understand him. I can actually understand him. Is this a human? I've learned something new. So this is what he looks like. It's said that human flesh is fragrant and blood is sweet. Hurry up, let's try it. Let me have the first bite. I'm going to taste it for everyone. Get lost. Do you know where to bite first? What if you break it? You don't understand. If you want to eat a human, you must first pull out the latch below him. This demon was very experienced and said seriously, really? There's such a thing. Latch. I've never seen it before. I really want to see it. That's right, that's right. Gradually, there were already several thousand of them. There were also many demons in the distance who had heard the news and were rushing over in excitement. Really? Humans? They're here. Let me see, let me see. I finally see a living human today. That's a legendary delicacy. Zhuo's forehead was filled with black lines. Were these demons? This group of people had never seen a human before? At this moment a dignified voice said, "Everyone disperse. Disperse. What's with all this noise?" As the demons in front of them parted like waves, 3 demons who were much taller than their peers appeared. The one in front had 3 heads, and a total of 21 eyes. Each head had 3 eyes on the left side of the face, 3 on the right side, and 1 eye between the eyebrows. 3721. Yes, that's right. 3721. Each head had 3 noses. From top to bottom, they were small nose, middle nose, and big nose. In total, there were 9 noses. In total, there were 3 mouths. Of course, there were also 18 ears. The 2 on the left and right. Ahem. There was no need to introduce them one by one. Anyway, they looked different. They were all weirdly shaped. The number of eyes, noses, and ears were also different. If their heads were not big enough, how could they fit so many things? The 3 demons stepped out of the crowd. They had big feet and wore animal skins. Their hair was messy, but there was a huge black bear skin on their shoulders. The black bear skin was really big. It was like a cloak on their bodies. At this moment, they actually looked quite stylish. But that was all he had. The leader of the demons with 21 eyes looked at Swordsmanship majestically. The three mouths opened together and said, "Human, you trespassed into the territory of the demons. Do you know that you're guilty? What are you here for? Why don't you tell us now?" His words were very polite, but the moment he opened his mouth, he labeled Swordsmanship as guilty. Swordsmanship was not offended. He breathed a sigh of relief. Being able to communicate was the best thing. He cupped his fists and said, "I was lost for a moment and accidentally entered your precious land. Please forgive me." Lost for a moment? The demon's eyes flickered strangely. You were lost for hundreds of thousands of miles? Human, you're very dishonest. Swordsmanship coughed and said, "I'm not familiar with this place. I was flustered and lost my way. But it was really an unintentional mistake. I didn't have any bad intentions towards your precious land." The demon couldn't help but stick out his tongue and lick the corner of his mouth. He looked like he was drooling, even though he pretended to be serious and wantonly made up words. The malice in his eyes had already revealed his thoughts. This human is full of nonsense. None of his words can be trusted. The demon said majestically, "Demons, take this person down." Then he said, "I'll taste it first." Before he finished speaking, he was already the first to rush forward. His previous words were filled with certainty and sonorous. He was clearly creating an excuse for himself. In his bones, he was just lusting after Swordsmanship's body. These words were all for the people around him to hear. What he meant was, "This guy's crime was decided by me. You're not allowed to snatch it. This guy is mine. His entire body is mine." As for what the human in front of him was thinking, was that important? That wasn't important. With a click, the demon opposite had already rushed forward. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws. He bared his teeth, and looked like he was going to swallow Swordsmanship whole. Swordsmanship frowned. The strength of the current leader of the demons was not considered too high among humans. He was only at the level of nascent soul, and this kind of strength, to Swordsmanship, could not even be considered as, "Haha, you want to eat me." Swordsmanship stretched out his hand and caught the demon who was charging at him. He pressed the demon's head on the ground with one hand like a steel claw. Then, he casually rubbed the demon's head on the ground and said while suppressing his anger, "I didn't want to fight with you. Damn, this human is so fierce." The demon next to him shouted, "Hurry up and report it. There's a spy. A human is attacking." Behind him, a demon took something out from behind his butt and blew it. It turned out to be a whistle. Tick, 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 tick. The whistle was blown. The delicacies are right in front of us. The first to move gets it. Everyone, let's attack together. The demon roared as he took out a spiked club. Seeing that the strongest demon was being held down by the human and rubbed against the ground, the demon knew that this guy was not to be trifled with. He instinctively chose to gang up on him. So what if you're strong? One demon can't beat you, but a group of demons can't beat you? There was a saying that went, "A real man can't fight his way out of the village. Let's fight together." Hearing this, Swordsmanship's temper flared up. "Do you really think I'm a sick cat if I don't show my power?" Murderous intent rose in his heart. This time, he didn't even use the cat spirit sword or the hammer of trial. He just took out the 99 kitty hammer. Two shadows flashed, and the two hammers disappeared into the 99 kitty hammer. Two rays of light, one white and one black, entered separately. Bai and Jiu were in place. This meant that the new 99 kitty hammer had appeared for the first time in its strongest state. It should be now. Demon world? Hey, Swordsmanship swung his hammer casually. "I just wanted to pass by. I didn't want to kill more people. You bunch of idiots just have to court death. Who can you blame?" Boom. The 30 to 40 demons at the front were unable to resist. Without exception, they were all smashed into pieces and flew out. Blood rained down from the sky, and the sky was covered in a bloody mist. "You don't even have a space ring. Tell me, how poor are you now? How dare you try to rob me? If I were you, I wouldn't have the courage to live." Boom. Another 30 or so demons were sent flying. Just like the demons before them, their corpses were completely obliterated, and their brains were all on the ground. You want to die? I'll grant you your wish. Chapter 1041. Boom, 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 boom. You're so ugly. You're disgusting. Don't you know that? Swishaodua was a little angry. Killing all of you will beautify the world. It's a great merit. Boom, boom, boom. Swishaodua had only moved forward 300 meters, but more than 1,000 demons had already been sent flying. All those that flew out were basically torn apart in midair. Those that were lucky enough to hit the hammerhead directly immediately turned into a rain of blood, scattering around in bits and pieces. Countless demons who had just gathered after hearing the news saw a white light and a bit of black gas in front of them. They couldn't see anyone at all. Finally, they couldn't help but show fear on their faces. How could this human be so cruel? Could it be that all the humans in the outside world are so cruel? Human flesh doesn't taste good at all. For a moment, the whole demon forest was filled with the sound of whistles from all directions. It was extremely urgent and full of panic. The whistles were sharp and piercing, resounding throughout the forest. On the other side, Swishaodua was rushing forward like a demon god. Wherever he went, the demons couldn't withstand a single blow. Everything that stood in his way, be it the demons or the trees, were all turned into ashes. At this moment, there was a big road that was more than 7,000 meters long behind him. It was wide and spacious, and this road was still going on. In the dense forest, Swishaodua was advancing bravely. With his own strength, he had forcefully carved out a path to the Sun Pass. As a demon wrote in his memoirs a long time later, there was no road in the world. But since Swishaodua came, there was a road. It was very wide and fertile. Bang, bang. Banged at the big hammer was swung continuously, and the aura of many souls that had fallen were all absorbed into the big hammer. Bai and Jiu, one was eagerly collecting the 3 souls, while the other was excitedly swallowing the 7 souls. That Swishaodua was completely unimpeded. The opponent was too weak, and Swishaodua did not even feel the impact. There was no pressure at all. All of the demons who dared to surround him were sent flying in the first moment. Too weak. Unable to withstand a single blow. You can't even withstand a single blow. Swishaodua couldn't help but think. My current image is the god of war. Swishaodua was very complacent. Before Swishaodua cultivated the Zhu Rong primordial fire, his battle prowess was already at the top of the younger generation in the 3 continents. It could be said that under the Skysoar realm, there was no one who could match him. In fact, the vast majority of fairy heavens weren't his match. Now that he had advanced a step further and reached the origin-returning realm, his battle prowess had multiplied. Furthermore, with the new 99 kitty hammer in hand, his battle prowess was at its peak. On the other hand, his opponents only had the battle prowess of a nascent soul cultivator, and there weren't many of them. Naturally, they could only be flattened. To put it bluntly, against such an enemy, not to mention 1,000, even if he killed 10,000 or 100,000, for the current Swishaodua, it would still be a piece of cake. It was just a matter of time. But no matter what he thought, he didn't slow down at all. In less than a few breaths of time, another 3 kilometers of road had opened up. Combined with the road in front of him, it was already 10,000 meters of road. Moreover, there was no turning back as he continued to advance forward. In front of him was a verdant and lush barrier. Behind him was thick smoke and a mess. This massacre allowed Swishaodua to vent some of the depression in his heart. After being chased and suppressed by the Umno Alliance for so long, he could finally vent his anger. Today, I, Swishaodua, am the only one who can dominate the Umno Alliance and defeat the demons. In the distant sky, the poisonous shaman was exhausted as he chased after the demon ancestor, Lei Changtian, in front of him. He was panting and couldn't help but curse. You're already so old, but you still have so much energy to run. Why don't you slow down a little? In front, Lei Changtian turned a deaf ear to him and ran as fast as he could. Slow down? How dare I slow down? I've lost my grandson. Do you think I'll dare to slow down? If I don't hurry up, my daughter and son-in-law will be here. Now Lei Changtian was really anxious. For several days, he dragged the poisonous shaman and flew around the Umno Alliance. He had already searched the places where the 8 beams of light landed. Now he was heading to the 9th beam of light. Further away, the Zhumang shaman was panting as he followed. His speed was slower than the poisonous shaman and Lei Changtian, but he had to follow. He didn't dare to not follow, because Lei Changtian had already gone crazy. If there was only the poisonous shaman, it would be impossible to suppress him. At most, it would be a draw. But in this state, the possibility of Lei Changtian self-destructing and dragging the poisonous shaman along was too high. Once it was confirmed that Zhuoxiaoduo was really gone, Lei Changtian would definitely self-destruct until the end. At that time, if the poisonous shaman was alone, he would definitely be dragged to the grave by Lei Changtian. Therefore, although the Zhumang shaman knew that he couldn't catch up, he still had to chase and follow. Even if he was tired to the point of vomiting blood, he still had to chase. When the time came, the two of them could withstand Lei Changtian's self-destruction together. Maybe there was a slight chance. If it really didn't work, he would stand in front of the poisonous shaman and let this guy live. This brother's life was too miserable. He couldn't let him die alone. Therefore, the Zhumang shaman risked his life all the way. Originally, it was okay. There was still the West Sea shaman to accompany him. The 3 great shamans joined forces to face the self-destruction of a powerhouse of the same level. Although they would inevitably suffer serious injuries, they wouldn't die. For powerhouses of their level, as long as they didn't die, serious injuries were nothing. But when they chased to the boundary of the West Sea, it seemed that something had happened there, forcing the West Sea shaman to deal with it. This also led to him being the only one left to follow the 2 people in front. Finally, he followed the first 8 places, but the 2 people in front turned around again and went to the 9th place to search. However, this was perhaps another step closer to death. The goal this time was the Heavenly Spirit Forest. After many days of running, the Zhumang shaman, who was always on guard, felt exhausted physically and mentally. Damn it, he never knew that after becoming a great shaman, he still had to worry about traveling. The 2 people in front of him were simply using their lives to hurry, and he was using his life to accompany them. Seeing that they weren't far from the place where the icy deep shaman was, the Zhumang shaman desperately launched the soul-shaking technique. Come out quickly. Something big has happened. The icy deep shaman, who had just finished his seclusion and was stuck at the last checkpoint, was suddenly angered by this sudden attack. Damn it! This Zhumang must be sick. Haha! The icy deep shaman jumped out at the first moment. His clothes were as white as snow, and he had the temperament of an iceberg. He was refined and extraordinary, but the moment he opened his mouth, this temperament was destroyed. He said angrily, Zhumang, look at your pathetic appearance. Why are you scaring me? Hurry up and catch up. Something is going to happen. The Zhumang shaman was almost out of breath. How could he still care about being angry? In front, Lei Changtian and Wu Du may self-destruct at any time. They will die together. Fuck your second uncle. The icy deep shaman was shocked when he heard this. Without saying anything, he ran out of the ice and snow, ignoring the Zhumang shaman's follow-up explanation. Don't talk nonsense. I'll hurry up and catch up. Otherwise, it'll be too late. This guy didn't know the cause and effect, or even what had happened. He just ran all the way in a hurry. Wu Du and Lei Changtian were going against each other? That was definitely not a good thing. As he ran, he complained. Wu Du, you idiot. You can't beat him. What's the use of that little poison of yours? The icy deep shaman didn't stop talking, and his feet didn't stop. He disappeared in a flash. Behind him, the Zhumang shaman, who had run out of breath and was almost out of oil, squatted on a mountain top, panting heavily. Every time he breathed out, there was a faint red air. Tired. I'm so tired. Previously, he had been running as if his life depended on it. He had been running madly for millions of miles in all directions without stopping. He had also been tearing space apart to hasten his journey. From east to west, from west to south, from south to north, from west to east. He had been running in circles without stopping. With Lei Zhongtian's extreme mentality at this moment, in order to guard against the unexpected, Zhu Mang Grand Sorcerer, who always had his heart in his throat, was really physically and mentally exhausted. He couldn't even find the time to take a breath. As long as he stopped to take a breath, the two people in front of him would be able to run away without a trace. And he couldn't even find the direction. Once the two people got out of his sight, what would happen next would be completely beyond the scope of his intervention. However, the Zhumang shaman didn't dare to think in a good direction. Even if Lei Changtian self-destructed, even if he didn't take Wudu with him, only Lei Changtian died, the Zhumang shaman wouldn't feel very good in his heart. Well, this is really a conscience to say in private. Lei Zhongtian is really dead, and Zhu Mang Great which will feel very uncomfortable in his heart, and he will feel very uncomfortable and very lost. After all, they were old opponents who had been fighting for so many years, and they had already become enemies and friends. Perhaps when they met on the real battlefield and fought for life and death, they would still kill each other when they got the opportunity. But in the end, no matter who really killed who, it was inevitable that they would think about it from time to time in the rest of their lives. Once they thought about it, they would be unhappy for a long time. Every year, it was common to sweep the other party's grave, that this was a very complicated and special emotion that was difficult to understand without personal experience. It was like this for Lei Changtian, not to mention the non-poisonous shaman, who had fought side by side for so many years. Once he thought of the extreme result of one of the two people self-destructing and pulling the other one together. How could the Zhumang shaman not be afraid? How could he dare to breathe? How could he dare to take it lightly? Chapter 1042. In particular, after going to the place where the 8 beam of light fell, he still couldn't find Zhuo Xiaoduo. The pressure around Lei Changtian was getting lower and lower. Zhu Mang Great which felt that something was wrong, but he had been carrying negative emotions for a long time, and it was really difficult for him to continue. After chasing all the way here, he finally got closer to Bing Ming Old Witch. He quickly called him out and asked him to follow him. On the top of the mountain, he breathed heavily like an old ox. He only felt that his heart was about to jump out of his throat, and his blood vessels were about to explode. Just a little bit more. Zhu Mang Great which was a little lucky. Just a little bit more, and I would have become the first great witch in history to die of exhaustion. This achievement. This Lei Changtian is really crazy. I hope Bing Ming can persuade him. I hope no one has an accident. Don't really die in this place. Zhu Mang Great which gasped hard, trying to adjust his breath to recover, and stuffed medicinal pills into his mouth. Unfortunately, he was nervous all the way, and he didn't even have time to eat medicinal pills. This was not an exaggeration, he really didn't. Because if he really wanted to eat medicinal pills, it was inevitable that he would slow down a little. But once he slowed down and was distracted, he might not be able to keep an eye on the two people. Maybe at that moment, Lei Changtian would explode himself? In the face of such a situation, how could Zhu Mang Great Witch dare to stop when the two people in front of him were always rushing for their lives? He couldn't even slow down for a moment. After resting for a while, Zhu Mang Great Witch felt that he seemed to have recovered a little strength. He tore the space again and chased out. I have to find another person. Bing Ming is not a bad person, but his mouth can make even a good person die of anger, let alone now. I'm afraid that Lei Changtian will give up being poisonous and turn to fight with Bing Ming. Maybe Lei Changtian didn't want to self-destruct, but he was angered by Bing Ming's words. The current situation isn't any different from before. Icy Nether didn't survive Lei Changtian's self-detonation, so he still can't escape death. If I sacrifice Icy Nether in order to save Dudu, it's still my fault. And it's a huge fault that I can't take off in this lifetime, because Icy Nether was summoned by my soul-shaking technique. It's even harder to absolve myself from the blame. I can't even atone for my sins with death. Zhu Mang Great Witch's heart is full of helplessness. Don't talk about the later death, He wants to die now. Why couldn't he go to anyone's territory? Why did he have to come to the ice nether? Any one of them would be better than Bing Ming at adjusting the situation and having an EQ. But this guy was the only one who didn't. Why couldn't I hold on a little longer? Why did I call out Bing Ming? Zhu Meng Great Witch dragged his body and saw that it was not too far away from Dan Kong Great Witch. He decided to go to Dan Kong. He was still extremely tired. Extremely tired. Hurry up and get Dan Kong out so I can rest at ease. Not to mention that Zhu Meng Great Witch went to find Dan Kong. On the other side, the Ice Nether Great Witch ran all the way, following the spiritual fluctuations in front of him, almost breaking his legs. But after turning in 2 directions, he didn't see anyone. These 2 people are not crazy. In desperation, the Ice Nether Great Witch began to burn the blood of Zhu Wu in his body and chased after them at a double speed, successfully following in the footsteps of Zhu Meng Great Witch. There was no other reason. If he didn't do this, he couldn't catch up at all. The reason why the 2 people in front of him were so fast must be that something big happened. If they were a step late, they might be separated by life and death. The Ice Nether Great Witch not only had the same association as Zhu Meng Great Witch, but also more complicated and terrible than Zhu Meng. Zhu Meng is so tired. God knows what the 2 in front of him are like. Although I didn't feel a strong impact wave, it must be the 2 of them shaking in the most extreme and restrained way. Maybe their brains have been beaten out. I just don't know if it's Dujio's brain or Lei Changtian's brain. If I can't catch up, Dujio, who is not good at martial arts, will definitely be beaten to a pulp. They don't like me every day, but I can't be unrighteous. I can't just watch them die. I must catch up, I must catch up. The Ice Nether Great Witch was anxious and burned his blood to chase after them. He also felt that he was very noble and righteous. For a moment, he even put on a moral halo for himself. He felt that his brothers beat him every day, but at the critical moment, he was still the most desperate. He was already a moral role model. They can't beat him anymore, can they? Maybe they will even praise him when they see him. Finally, he saw the backs of the 2 in front of him. Lei Changtian was running in front, taking the lead. Dujio followed closely behind like a shadow, neither close nor far. Of course, he didn't dare to not follow. For someone like Lei Changtian, once he got rid of the restraints of the Great Witch, if he went crazy in the inner cities of the Umno Alliance, thousands of miles of land would be a piece of cake. The blood of the Wu people would flow like a river. Such a strong person must be kept in check. And now, the only one who could keep up was himself. Not to mention, he was also the one who caused this matter to go out of control. Dujio was already complaining in his heart. I thought it was finally my turn to show up and preside over the big event. Damn it, I did show up. But why did I show up? I didn't take charge. I made a big deal. Did I take charge just to go back and forth in circles around the Umno Alliance's mainland? Did he use all his strength and speed to run crazily again and again? What was I doing? Fuck. He was tired. But how could Long Tier Sky not be tired? But no matter how tired Lei Changtian was, he didn't dare to stop. Grandson, where did you go? It's been a few days, I've run to so many places, but I still can't see you. At this moment, even if Lei Zhangtian ran himself to death on the road, it was impossible for him to stop. He had to get confirmation of Zhuo Xiaoduo's whereabouts. Only then could he call it a temporary stop. No matter how hard it was, no matter how exhausted they were, they didn't stop. However, their speed inevitably became slower and slower. This was also the fundamental reason why the Great Ice Nether, which was gradually catching up with them. Of course, only the Great Ice which could catch up with them. The rest of the experts were still unable to catch up with them. Their so-called slower and slower speed was only relative to the practitioners at the same level as them. The rest of them were still mediocre and insignificant. At this moment, there was a dark forest in front of them. The Ice Nether Witch's entire body was covered with an unparalleled frosty air, and chased after Ji Hao from behind at lightning speed. Hey, the one in front. I'm telling you to stop or I'll. When the poisonous witch heard that the icy hell witch had caught up She immediately let out a sigh of relief. Without saying anything, she stopped in midair and almost fell down. She pointed forward and said, "Chase. Chase after him." "Don't." The Great Ice Witch was shocked and said, "What's wrong? Why are you two running like idiots? You're not fighting but running? What's the use of that?" The Great Poison Witch was furious and said intermittently, "Bullshit. Chase after him. This old guy lost his grandson. He's going crazy now." The Great Ice Witch was stunned. His grandson is lost. His grandson? Isn't his grandson Zhuchangchang's son? Lost. So what if he's lost? What's the big deal? Besides, we didn't lose him. Lost. He's lost. Stop talking nonsense. The Great Poison Witch was out of breath. Chase after him quickly. This old thing is about to go crazy. It didn't matter if she said it quickly. The Great Ice Witch's mind was spinning. Zhuchangchang's son, Lei Changtian's grandson, is lost. Why the fuck do we have to help find him? What the fuck is this? This isn't right. Isn't Zhuchangchang's son? Fuck. The Great Ice Witch suddenly shouted, "Fuck!" The Great Poison Witch. The Great Ice Witch jumped up in the air, her eyes staring straight and her face pale. Fuck his old ass. That kid lost. 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 Whoosh. Before the Great Poison Witch fell, the Great Ice Witch couldn't catch her breath and fell from the sky like a meteorite. Fuck you. The Great Poison Witch was furious. Look at the situation now. Can you fucking be more serious? I'm as tired as a sock, but I didn't fall. Why did you fall? Why are you so weak? Who? A figure flashed, and the ice abyss which once again rushed up, her face immediately pale. Did Lei Zhangtian lose his grandson? Zhuchangchang's son is missing? Did you inform Boss Flood? Yeah. Well, why should I inform Boss Flood? Lei Changtian isn't worth it. Fuck. The Great Ice Witch turned and ran, chasing after Lei Changtian and yelling, "You fucking don't know anything, fuck off." After saying these few words, he disappeared without a trace. He actually spurred his horse even faster to chase after Chu Yang. Her speed was even faster than before. Obviously, the Great Ice Witch was really going all out this time. The Great Poison Witch was confused. What was going on? Why did the Great Poison Witch seem to be more anxious than Lei Changtian? And why did she inform Boss Flood? How could this have anything to do with Boss Flood? There was something wrong with the Great Poison Witch's brain. Forget it, let the Great Poison Witch worry about it. I don't care. I'll take a few breaths first. Only then did the non-poisonous shaman grab the pills. Like eating beans, he kept stuffing them into his mouth, chewing them in handfuls with crunching sounds. Then he took out some spiritual water and gulped it down his throat. I fucking give up. This thing. I was almost dragged to death by the old devil. Cough, let me say it weekly ticket. Chapter 1043. Thinking of the 10 pillars of light that rushed up, the non-poisonous shaman was even more furious. His entire body was filled with a sense of powerlessness. That was Zhu Wu Zhurong's handiwork. He couldn't track it at all, and could only rely on his senses. And the most amazing thing was, these 10 beams of light had all landed in the most uninhabited and desolate places. In other words, no one would be able to send a message after discovering it. What's more, those places were so remote that there was no signal at all. Another problem with this kind of location was that they could only wait for the 10 kids to walk out by themselves, or wait for others to find them, like searching for a needle in a haystack. Only then could they be considered to have regained contact. How many tens of thousands of years have you left this world? It's all thanks to you that you could find such a remote place. The non-poisonous, which kept complaining about Zhu Wu Zhurong in his heart. The first time he found Kami no Su, he realized it wasn't Zhuxiaoduo. Lei Changtian turned and left. The non-poisonous which had no choice but to follow. He didn't even dare to say a word to Kami no Su. He just yelled at him to get lost, and then found Shaja for the second time. Swoosh. 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 There was no time to catch his breath. The non-poisonous which felt that his legs had become thin after running for a few days. Other than the West Sea, he went to all the other 8 places. Then he finally came to this side of Heavenly Spirit Forest. The reason why this was the last stop was naturally because the beam of light in this direction was the furthest. If he came in this direction first, it would be the most time-consuming to go back and forth. It was also the least likely to come here because compared to the landing point of Kami no Su and the others in Heavenly Spirit Forest, it was almost 3 times the distance. What's more, as long as it didn't reach the Heavenly Spirit Forest, it could be said that there were many cities along the way. In other words, if it landed here, it could be said that it was the easiest to be discovered out of the 10 beams of light. Lei Changtian naturally knew this as well. After all, he had dealt with the Wu people for so many years, so he had some understanding of the geography. However, after looking in all directions and confirming that it was not Swishaoduo, the two of them had no choice but to rush over. A few days had passed since then. Whether it was Lei Zhangtian or the great shaman, they were all exhausted. Lei Changtian was in front, and he didn't care about anything else. He could only focus on rushing towards the last location. His goal was naturally the Heavenly Spirit Forest. The great icy hell witch, who was chasing after them, once again sped up and yelled, Old devil, let me tell you. Stop, I have something to say. It's very important." Lei Changtian had no interest in listening to the great icy hell witch's nonsense. Naturally, he turned a deaf ear to her and continued to search in front of her. His eyes were red. If he couldn't find his grandson, or if he met with misfortune, Lei Changtian felt that he would be angered to death by himself. How could there be a grandfather like you in the world? You threw your grandson into the enemy's territory, and then he disappeared, or even died prematurely. Hehe. If this matter spreads out, I, Lei Changtian, will definitely become famous again. I will become famous again after my daughter was chased away by my elder brother. I will become the laughingstock of thousands of generations. Most importantly, even if he died, he wouldn't be able to close his eyes. This was too shameful. To the point where he died with his eyes open. The great icy hell, which didn't consume a lot of energy like before. She moved quickly and quickly came to Lei Changtian's side. She said anxiously, "Old devil, this matter. Don't worry, it will be fine. This place is not for you to act rashly. You have to believe me. I am on your side. We are relatives." Boom. Lei Changtian didn't allow her to explain. He hit the great icy hell witch with his palm and said in a low voice, "Shut up." The great icy hell witch grimaced. "Old devil, I'm telling you, don't be unreasonable with me. When it comes to being unreasonable, it's not your turn to be unreasonable in this world. Back then Before her voice died away, a violent aura suddenly rose from Lei Changtian's body. It was the prelude to self-explosion. Lei Changtian's face also became ferocious. "If I really can't find him, I will take one of the great witches away. Consider it my contribution to the astral souls. How about you?" Wait. The great icy hell witch's face changed and her voice changed. She shook her head and waved her hands. "I'm scared, haha. Don't be impulsive. You are unreasonable, but you are more unreasonable than me. Don't be impulsive, okay?" As she spoke, she quickly retreated dozens of meters and said with a kind face, "I came here to accompany you to find him. You have to believe me. I am really here to help you. I won't lie. I am on your side. If I lie to you, I will be struck by lightning. I will give birth to a son without an anus. Don't be impulsive. Don't be impulsive." Lei Changtian looked at her suspiciously and narrowed his eyes. "You are so kind. Why should I believe you? As long as you don't be impulsive, we can talk about anything. That kid is such a big living person. How can he be lost? Since he didn't appear in the first 9 places, then he must have landed here. Isn't this a sure thing? Let's find him together. How can we not find him? Who are we?" The great icy hell witch said, "Look carefully at the woods below, and see if there is a little trace." As she spoke, she pointed casually. Lei Changtian turned his head and looked. Speaking of which, it was really a coincidence that the direction that the icy deep witch casually pointed at was really the direction that Swishaoduo had rushed down. Although it had been healed by the vitality of the people, it could not be completely restored in just a few days. Therefore, there was a passage that rushed down from above. Lei Changtian's eyes lit up. Yes, it is here. As he spoke, he glanced at the great icy hell witch. This guy's eyes were really good. He found it as soon as he arrived. My mind is in a mess. I didn't even find such an obvious thing. Fortunately, he came. The great icy hell, which was stunned and confused. I just pointed casually and he found it? That's good, that's good. I have shown my kindness first. At least I don't have to be used as a scapegoat. Thinking of this, a layer of cold sweat appeared on his back, and his mind calmed down a little. Then, he cursed the great witch Zhu Meng in his heart. This son of a bitch is really not a good thing. I knew this guy was up to no good. Sure enough, he called me out with the soul-shaking technique. And he actually used me as a scapegoat. This old devil in front of me has obviously reached the point where he has completely lost his mind. He is like a bag of explosives that has been ignited. Whoever ran into this old man would have to follow him and explode as well. At this time Zhu Meng called me out and pointed casually. Go quickly. Go to your second uncle. Then, I came here stupidly. If I didn't know that Zhou Xiaoduo had a relationship with Boss Flood and really wanted to help, wouldn't I be in a life-or-death situation? I was framed so badly that I couldn't close my eyes. If I can go back alive this time, I will call my sister and my brother-in-law to kill this bastard Zhu Meng. When did he offend you? As for framing me like this, the great witch was so angry that his liver was swollen. I usually didn't offend you, Zhu Meng. I just made a lot of jokes. You can't take a joke. He was cursing in his heart, but he had a smile on his face. He followed Lei Changtian and flew down. After all, Zhou Xiaoduo had to be found no matter what. If this brat is really dead, Lei Changtian will probably take me along with him. I'm afraid that even Big Brother Flood will go berserk. He prayed as he searched. Little ancestor, don't die. Even if you really want to die, wait for me to drag Zhu Meng over. After you die with me, I'm too innocent. Who did I offend? I'm really kind, full of kindness. A kind person like me. There are traces here. It had to be said that when the demon ancestor was in a mess, the great witch was clear-headed and acted as a guide. He was quite competent. The most important thing was that he was sincerely helping, and was very careful and meticulous. In fact, the great witch felt that this was the most careful and meticulous thing he had ever done in his life. The two of them followed the directions where Xiaoduo had rushed in, and searched all the way to Heavenly Spirit Forest. Behind them, the great witch, who finally caught his breath, put his attention on the demon ancestor Bing Ming. However, when he looked ahead and tried to search again, he couldn't find the direction the two of them went. Damn, where did they go? How did they disappear completely in such a short time? The great witch couldn't help but feel numb. Although he knew that Zhou Xiaoduo must be at the last place, and also knew the approximate landing point of Zhou Xiaoduo, there was a forest in front of him that stretched for hundreds of thousands of miles. Where could he find them in such a vast place? It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. You guys. Especially Bing Ming. Why don't you think about letting out a long roar from time to time? Even scolding a few times would be good. You guys are so opportunistic when two old enemies are together. Whispering all the way. You guys haven't made a single sound for so long? You guys didn't discuss going to sleep together, did you? You should at least give me a mental wave. What the fuck is going on here? He finally got someone to help him, but it turned out to be someone with a brain full of tofu dregs. This is really making me worried sick. The great witch stood in the air in a daze, looking here and there. He didn't know where to go. Then he suddenly frowned. There. Seems to be movement over there? He turned his head and listened in another direction, but it was hard to confirm. However, it was just a small sound. How could he give it up like he had discovered a new continent? He flew over with a whoosh. He flew thousands of miles away from the direction demon ancestor Bing Ming went. Finally, he heard it clearly. There seemed to be a battle over there. The non-poisonous shaman's current location was still very far from the battle site, but the battle there was really very intense. The earth-shaking fluctuations could already be felt from here. Damn, don't tell me those two are fighting. The Great Witch flew over anxiously. Chapter 1044. Isn't this the territory of the demons? Why are they fighting here? Don't get me involved. The non-poisonous shaman was speechless. Back then, this place was considered a forbidden area for the Wu people, that it was said that their ancestors had some kind of agreement with the demons. Boss Flood even said that as long as the demons don't come out, we won't bother with them. Most importantly, we can't go in. This was the main rule written in the Iron Rule of the Wu people. But now that they were fighting in this forbidden area, wouldn't it be a big mess? Damn you, Bing Ming. Lei Changtian doesn't know any better. Don't you know the severity of the situation? I'd better hurry over. Whether it's troublesome or not can wait. I'll go over and see if I can persuade him. If I can't, I'll join forces with Bing Ming and beat this old thing to death. I'm going to die from running all the way. The non-poisonous shaman flew toward the demon forest with a cloud of black smoke. Xiaoduo ran all the way, swinging his hammers as he flew forward. Wherever he went, flesh and blood flew. He was invincible. He didn't use his ultimate state anymore. On one hand, maintaining that state for a long time consumed a lot of energy. On the other hand, the demons in front of him were only so. Using that ultimate power was like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. He just needed to get used to that state and get a general understanding of the combat power in that state. There was no need to waste it. Thirdly, there were a lot of enemies in front of him, but that was all. He could make use of them to test what he had comprehended during this period of time over and over again in the form of actual combat. During this period of time, his cultivation had progressed too fast, and there was no one to spar with him. His foundation wasn't stable. It was a good opportunity to spar with these demons. He could cram in some basic knowledge. Thousand Soul Hammer, Wind and Rain Hammer, Mountain River Hammer, Sun Moon Hammer, and Yin Yang Hammer were used one by one. Xiaoduo had no pity for the demons in front of him, and he wouldn't show them any mercy. She would be a saint if she were to show mercy to a race that she was drooling over. Furthermore, she would be a saint who had no bottom line at all. Xiaoduo felt that it was impossible for him to be that kind of bitch. Absolutely impossible. This journey was naturally filled with bloodshed. Along the way, there was no fluctuation in his heart at all. In his eyes, all living beings were monsters that devoured humans. Not only did he not feel the slightest bit of guilt by killing them, he was even afraid that he would harm the common people if he didn't kill them. It was better to just kill them now. As he charged forward, the only thing he felt was that it was too easy in the beginning. There were no obstacles at all, and he just smashed his way through. After a while, the pressure lessened a little. It seemed that the other side had sent out some of their higher-level forces. However, they weren't really a hindrance. They just had to continue attacking like crazy. They were still sent flying and shattered one after another. After a while, the pressure increased again. However, it did not matter. He could still deal with it. Now he finally felt the pressure. However, it was still okay. He could still deal with it. That was his speed was slightly affected, and he slowed down a little. However, he still pushed forward and destroyed everything in his path. Pushing forward and attacking fiercely all the way, Xiaoduo's mood became more and more comfortable. He couldn't help but think of the legends in the novels, where he took the head of a general from an army of millions. He couldn't help but feel proud. With my current cultivation, if I were to go to war in ancient times, it would be a piece of cake for me to go in and out of an army with thousands of horses. I don't even need to use horses. Isn't that better than those peerless generals? Or even more? Oh yeah, the current atmosphere was simply too much of a bully. It was simply exhilarating. It was a climax. As for the angry shouts of the demons who had just arrived, what did their shouts have to do with me? I'll just ignore them and turn a deaf ear to them. You've already said that you want to eat me. You're craving for my body. You want to swallow me whole. How can I not resist? How can I not fight back? What I'm doing is real and proper. It's the most legitimate form of self-defense no matter where I am. Everyone has already established an irreconcilable opposition. If I don't fight back, I'll be sending myself to the tiger's mouth. Let's say that I've already killed so many of you. In this situation, if I really stop, you'll only swarm me and swallow me whole. How can you reconcile with me? That's impossible. It'll be the biggest joke in the world. Since it's impossible, what's the point of talking about it? Just do it. Do it to the end. So far, Swordsmanship had pushed forward a super long distance of 50,000 meters. Behind him, there was a long road of 50 kilometers. It was very stable and solid. It was stained with blood. Along the way, screams not only rose and fell one after another, but they were so loud that it was like a tsunami. Behind Swordsmanship, it was completely clean. Surprisingly, no demons dared to sneak up on him from behind. On both sides, there were many demons who were still in shock. Looking at the smoke and dust in front of them, they were dumbfounded. Their legs and stomachs were cramping. Are humans really so cruel? It's completely different from what's recorded in the novels and legends. Just this bald-headed fellow has already killed tens of thousands of us. Furthermore, he's still as lively as a dragon and lively as a tiger. There's no sign of fatigue at all. Even his speed hasn't decreased in the slightest. Could it be that he can continue killing? Kill tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. At first, the Soul Transformation Commander was sent flying. Then, the Huayun Commander was sent flying. Then, the Royal God Commander was sent flying as well. Then the Guixian Commander was sent flying as well. In total, a large number of people were sent flying. Just now, the three sky-soaring commanders attacked together. Originally, everyone thought that it was enough. At least, they wouldn't be sent flying again. But who would have thought that the three sky-soaring commanders still couldn't escape the fate of being sent flying? What the fuck? This human. How can he be so cruel to such an incomprehensible extent? Is it because this human is too cruel? Or is it because all humans are so cruel? There's no need for all humans to be so cruel. As long as there's a small portion of humans who are at this level, it seems like there's no way for us demons to survive. Look, that human is still rushing out. The three sky-soaring commanders working together still have no effect on him. It's meaningless. That is probably because our knowledge is too shallow. How could we have imagined that a battle could be so cruel? Looking at the countless demons that had already turned into minced meat on the ground, countless demons began to ponder in their hearts. Humans are so cruel. Do we still want to go out? Can we really return to our former glory? However, the higher-ups of the demon race naturally wouldn't let this go. In fact, after killing to his heart's content, Swordsmanship, who had killed to his heart's content, had already encountered enough resistance to stop him. The dozen or so devil race experts at the front joined forces and attacked together. With a loud explosion, the dozen or so devil race Skysoar realm experts were sent flying just like before. There were no exceptions. The only difference was that although these dozen or so sky-soaring realm demons were all vomiting blood, none of them had truly died. In other words, these demons were all injured, but none of them had lost their lives. And this was already an unprecedented huge improvement. At this moment, Swordsmanship also felt an unprecedented resistance. He was no longer unstoppable. The strength of the three demon experts was especially impressive when facing Swordsmanship. It made Swordsmanship feel that what he was facing was no longer a group of demons that he could kill easily, but a mountain. A mountain. A mountain. Swordsmanship changed his move, Storm Hammer of the 8 Directions, and still managed to repel the 15 demon experts. However, his momentum had finally stopped. He had no choice but to squint his eyes and focus on the front. The originally restrained Zhu Rong True Fire seemed to have felt the influence of the battle outside. It took the initiative to circulate, as if it was eagerly waiting to be used by Swordsmanship. It was eager to go out and fight. It had been silent for too long. The previous massacre was just a drop in the ocean. It was not enough to reach the apex. Swordsmanship felt that his dantian was filled with true origin. The fire attribute spiritual energy seemed to be about to explode at any time. He felt that he could fight his way to the 9 heavens without stopping. without stopping. It was as if there was a voice in his head that kept telling him, "Fuck! Why did you stop? Go ahead. Go ahead." If he did not have this impulse, Shuo might have really continued to rush forward. However, this sudden and inexplicable impulse made Shuo feel strange. He felt that something was wrong. This Zhu Rong true fire's enthusiasm for fighting was too high. One should act according to one's ability when fighting a battle. How could he continue to be reckless? Therefore, he simply stopped. Activating the elemental flame magic, Ji Hao calmed down the agitated Zhu Rong true fire, then secretly made up his mind that he would not use the Zhu Rong true fire unless he could use it in the future. He would wait until he had absolute control over the fire, then he would do anything else. He was not afraid of its power being too strong. He was also not afraid of overusing it. He now had endless power. However, he was afraid that it would become a habit. If he got used to it, it would be terrible. Shuo really did not expect that the Zhu Rong true fire, which was known as the leader of all flames, would have such a wild side. This might be in line with the effect of the fire attribute absolute hypnosis technique, but it was not in line with Shuo's fighting style, which was to fight steadily and surely. Zhu Rong true fire's fighting style was to not care about his own life, nor about the lives of others. However, Shuo's fighting style was to not only take the lives of others, but also his own. It sounded like they had the same meaning. However, after careful consideration, the two were not the same. Shuo felt this impulse, and could not help but have a vague guess. The reason why Zhu Rong had such a temper in the past was that he was influenced by this Zhu Rong true fire. Imperceptible influence, habit becomes second nature. And naturally, if I end up like that, Shuo could not help but shudder. I am still a small shrimp now. How can I be so reckless? That this chapter is written a little wrong. I will think about it tonight. Should I continue this line? If it doesn't work, I will revise it. After revising it, I will tell everyone to read it again. Chapter 1045. This was Shuo's mentality. When he was able to enter the Tao and become a martial artist, Shuo felt gratified and elated. Finally, he could protect the people around him, and he felt that he was invincible. However, when he broke through to the martial master realm, Shuo quickly positioned himself as a small shrimp in the Jianghu, and this position had not changed even until now. Yes, I'm just a small shrimp. There are countless experts in the world. I can't be impulsive, I can't act rashly, I can't cause a ruckus. I need to be safe, and I need to be safe. If it's not a sure thing, and if it doesn't involve personal safety, I won't act rashly. All the way to core nascent, soul transformation, cloud transformation, divine reigning, and mysterious returning. Shuo's original intention had not changed. He firmly believed that he was a weak shrimp in his bones. At most, he was a shrimp that was stronger than other shrimps. If there was a slight disturbance, he would turn around and run. Safety first. This was the true Zhuo way of doing things in fighting. Human. In front of him, a demon race Skysor realm expert spat out blood. His eyes were filled with extreme shock as he angrily said, "Why did you come to our demon race's territory and slaughter our people? Our demon race has been living in seclusion here for millions of years. And we haven't come out to the world. We haven't been tainted by any karma or hatred, and we haven't done anything to the human race. Why did you kill us so viciously?" Shuo impatiently said, "Nonsense, my ass. If you didn't want to eat me and covet this daddy's body, this daddy wouldn't be interested in fighting with you guys. Do you think this daddy didn't want to treat you with respect from the start? You demons were the ones who attacked first. Do you know that? This daddy isn't a sitting duck. Fuck, are you going to fight or not? If you're not going to fight, then get out of the way. This daddy is too lazy to reason with you guys." "Eat you?" This demon race Skysor realm expert was shocked. Who would want to eat such a murderous star? Wasn't this the same as courting death? Coveting his body? Was this death god's body something that could be coveted so casually? He couldn't help but be filled with anger. He was angry at this human, but even more angry at his people. What kind of thing did you guys provoke? With just one word, tens of thousands of clansmen had died. Who said that? Where is he? Although he was asking, he was clear that given how vicious and merciless this human was, that demon who said that he wanted to eat him would have been killed in the first instant. At the side, a demon race Skysaur staggered to his feet. His face was as pale as paper, and 2 of the 13 eyes on his head had been destroyed. Black blood was flowing out from his eyes. He said fiercely, "Our demon race is not an unreasonable race. You only need to tell us your identity and show us your cultivation. Then, no matter how blind the demon race is, they will not deliberately make enemies and seek their own deaths. After all, there are rules for the strong. Why do we have to kill you?" Swordsmanship swung his pendulum innocently. "That's right, the strong have their own rules. Aren't I just showing a little bit of my cultivation? But you guys are still unwilling to let me off. You have to believe me. I'm really just revealing a little bit of my cultivation base. It's just a small test." Looking behind Swordsmanship, at the 30 to 40,000 meters long bloody alley, the few demon race experts were so angry that their chests felt stuffy. You call this showing a little bit of your cultivation base? Just a small test. You want to slaughter tens of thousands of people just by showing a little bit of your cultivation base? If you want to start a massacre, are you going to kill every last one of the demon race? Why are you talking so much nonsense? Just tell me, do you still want to fight today or not? If you don't, I'll leave. If you want to continue, just say the word. I've always adhered to this principle. Since I've already made my move, I won't use my mouth anymore." Swordsmanship shouted. He was very clear in his heart that now that things had reached this point, there was no way he could just let this matter go. Since that was the case, he would fight until the sky and earth were turned upside down first. On the other side, the 15 demon race Skysaur realm experts had a fierce look in their eyes. Just as Swordsmanship thought, now that things had reached this point, there was no way they would just let it go. The reason why they spoke was because they were shocked by Swordsmanship's strength. They knew that if they continued to fight, even they would not be able to escape death, so they wanted to stall for time. But it was obvious that the other party was not fooled. Seeing Swordsmanship raise his hammers again, the 15 demon race experts shouted at the same time, "Heavenly demon formation!" The 15 demon race experts suddenly rotated together, and at the same time, 3 more demon race experts flew out and joined in. In an instant, the 18 demon race experts each took a side and moved in an orderly manner. What followed was a surge of demon chi that covered the sky and earth. In an instant, the area within a radius of 300 meters was covered by the demon chi. All of the devilish beings within a radius of over a kilometer were sent flying in unison, and all of them lost their footing in unison. Suddenly, a voice that sounded like the whisper of a nightmare slowly rang out. "Demon ancestor above, demon god bears witness. 18 heavenly demons, step into the world once more." In the distance, a large group of demon race experts was rushing over. Coincidentally, their leader was Swordsmanship, who had just gone to the Wan Mingxing side. Seeing this scene, he subconsciously stopped. It's the 18 heavenly demon formation. What kind of powerful enemy is attacking? Why would they need to set up a heavenly demon formation? Could it be that someone at the level of a general or higher from the Wu people is here? In the end, this was the continent that belonged to the Wu people. Naturally, they could only think of the Wu people as the first choice. It's not the Wu people, it's a human. He's using 2 hammers. That's fierce, too fierce. One of the demon race experts was still in a state of shock. As he explained the current situation, he gradually became incoherent due to the fear in his heart. Let's see. Swordsmanship's expression was abnormally heavy. How could something like this happen at such a time? Was it a coincidence, or was it a warning from the heavens? But the 18 heavenly demon formation, which had been dormant for countless years, had reappeared. Furthermore, it was set up by 18 low-level Skysaur experts. Yet it still couldn't take down this human. Just who was this human? How could he be so strong? Zhuo was instantly drawn into the heavenly demon formation. His vision suddenly turned dark, and for a moment, he felt like he was going blind. He simply closed his eyes. Then, a ball of white light and a streak of black chi danced in the air. The twin hammers spun, and the wind and rain intertwined. Boom, 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 boom. Numerous devils formed by devil chi screamed shrilly as they rushed over from all directions. Zhuo hammered one demon at a time. Various hammer techniques and ingenious moves were displayed one by one. One by one, he integrated them into the actual battle. He wasn't in a hurry. Ever since the appearance of the Skysore Realm demon, Zhuo knew that today was not going to end peacefully. Thus, he chose to fight steadily and surely. He practiced all of his hammer techniques in actual battle, and mastered them through a comprehensive study. The Skysore Realm was definitely not the end. He had to be prepared. If he could increase his strength, then so be it. When the time came, and he confirmed that he couldn't win, then it wouldn't be too late to enter the spatial extermination pagoda. At the very least, he had to test his current cultivation and strength. The twin hammers were covered in white light and black chi. The wind was so shrill that it sounded like the cries of ghosts. In the blink of an eye, several hundred moves had passed. Zhuo was still immersed in his comprehension. The twin hammers spun, and various ingenious moves emerged one after another. Gradually, he mastered them through a comprehensive study. On the other hand, the 18 Skysore Realm demon experts were drenched in sweat, unable to continue. This brat is too tough. I can't bite him, I can't bite him. His twin hammers, that at least in the eyes of the 18 Skysore Realm demon experts, he was another the Flood Witch. They were as heavy as a mountain, and they would die if they were hit or grazed. Yet in the hands of this brat, they were as light as a piece of grass. He was able to wield them as if they were part of his body. How deep did his cultivation have to be able to wield them so effortlessly? Up until now, he had continuously used the hammers to smash out 130 li. To think that he still had so much strength left. This was simply inconceivable. It was beyond the understanding of the demon experts. Little did they know that Zhuo was only practicing. The so-called lack of strength was not within Zhuo's consideration. He didn't even think about it. Exhausted? I'm not afraid to tell you that I haven't used any strength yet. Not to mention that I still have many spirit herbs, limitless vitality, and the heaven-mending stone that I haven't used yet. Finally, the 18 Sky Demon Great Formation that had been pushed to the limit pushed the demonic chi to another level. Within the endless hidden demonic chi, tens of thousands of demonic chi appeared from all directions. Accompanied by twinkling starlight, they all pounced down. In the sky, a huge demonic chi image formed. The 18 Sky Demon Soul Extinguishing Formation has finally reached the limit of demonic chi. Sergio heaved a sigh of relief. At this point, no matter how strong the humans inside were, they were destined to be unable to resist the demonic chi. Because at this stage, the strength of the 18 Skysore Realm experts would increase by one-fold along with the appearance of the Devil's Soul. Everyone's strength would increase by one-fold, although they hadn't reached the point where the demonic chi would appear. At this point, it was more than enough to deal with the majority of the enemies. At this moment, following a loud roar, Zhuo, who was surrounded by the Demon Soul Extinguishing Formation, roared. At this moment, Zhuo's body spun rapidly and retracted the hammers. Taking advantage of the momentum, he pointed the hammers in his left hand to the sky, and his right hand to the ground. A never-before-seen demonic chi, that was a mixture of water and fire, suddenly appeared. As if responding to the demonic chi, the gates of hell suddenly appeared with a hum. Countless spirits and malicious ghosts rushed out with bared fangs and brandished claws. Shrieking, they rushed towards the Demon Soul Extinguishing Formation. The two hammers turned into a destructive hurricane that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer. Boom! The strongest attack of the 18 Sky Demon Great Formation collided head-on with the Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer. Zhuo habitually swung the 99 hammers in a row. The water tank-sized hammers were swung so hard that not even a drop of water could escape. At this moment, Swishaoduo was like a demon that had suddenly descended into the world. Chapter 1046. Boom boom boom. A series of blood-curdling screams sounded. The 18 flying demons were all sent flying at the same time, spitting out blood. Some of them even began to spit out their crushed organs in midair. There were also 2 who had just flown out. Their bodies were already torn apart in a strange manner in midair, because they could not bear the weight. They disintegrated and scattered in all directions. Clang! Swishaoduo landed on the ground, and his 2 hammers collided with a crisp sound. His aura suddenly soared, and he laughed maniacally. Who else? Who else? Come up and accept your death. Swishaoduo let out a wild laugh. Without saying anything, he strode forward with his twin hammers. His aura was ferocious, and his aura was monstrous. For a moment, his aura was unparalleled, and he exuded an aura of invincibility. In front of him, hundreds of demon tribe elites were intimidated by his aura, and they all involuntarily took a step back. Swishaoduo resolutely strode forward with his long legs. On each side of him was a hammer the size of a water tank, reflecting the shiny bald head in the middle. It was like a third hammer, similarly sparkling, just that it was smaller. As he walked, he felt that it was a pity. There were so many demons here, and they were all my providence points. However, now was not the time. If there were fewer enemies, he would have an easier time. With a plan in mind, he would definitely be able to obtain more providence points. However, under the current circumstances, he was surrounded by the entire demon tribe, and if he still wanted to stall for time, he would die of exhaustion even if he reached the Dao integration stage. Every time I kill someone, there will always be people who will question me. I don't know. Therefore, every time something like this happens, I can add these words and the words in brackets. After all, I have to clear up their doubts. I have to say, I'm quite familiar with these words. I'm just waiting for the comments to say, why don't you know? Therefore, I'll copy the next chapter. Ha 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 ha. Swishaoduo roared into the sky. Why don't you go out and ask around? Who am I? Who dares to provoke me, Swishaoduo in the 3 continents? Astral souls don't dare, and neither do the Dao tribe. The Wu people especially don't dare. Swishaoduo laughed wildly. Remember my name. I am Swishaoduo. Left means left. Half of the sky is my left. Small, that's right. How could I find this piece of sky small? A lot means a lot of people who aren't afraid of a lot of people. Got it. Swishaoduo shouted like a thunderclap. Many of the demons with average cultivation bases in the surroundings were actually shaken to the point that their ears were buzzing. They almost went deaf, and a few of them even fell to the ground. There was another guy whose mind was taken away, but he actually responded instinctively. Got it. She immediately came back to her senses. She was so embarrassed that she couldn't show her face. She instinctively covered her face. Opposite. Mo Sergio snorted and strode forward. How impressive, he said coolly. Swishaoduo narrowed his eyes and looked at him. Suddenly he asked, You're Mo Sergio? Mo Sergio was stunned. How do you know me? I knew your name the moment you walked out. Swishaoduo pointed his hammer at the sky and said, I can communicate with the heavenly Dao, and it's easy for me to see through heaven and earth. What's the point of knowing your name? Mo Sergio's brain wasn't very good to begin with, so he was shocked. What? You can communicate with the heavenly Dao? See through heaven and earth? That's right, Swishaoduo said coldly. Mo Sergio, you demons are at a critical juncture, and you're worried about your future. Why do you have to provoke a powerful enemy like me at this time? You're making an unparalleled enemy for no reason. You're so stupid. Mo Sergio was even more shocked. He knew about this critical juncture, and his future? This. Swishaoduo stepped forward, staring into Mo Sergio's eyes. I think you won't be able to escape the fate of being killed by your boss this time. Mo Sergio couldn't help but take a step back and look into the depths of the forest. You, how do you know us so well? Swishaoduo moved his divine sense, and Bai ran into his left eye and Jiu into his right eye. Suddenly the two eyes were black and white. It was so strange that Emo Shurjio's eyes widened in shock. Fuck. These eyes that's so scary. Swishaoduo stepped forward and looked at Emo Shurjio with his black and white eyes. The heavenly Tao is above. Heaven and earth can see through heaven and earth. What do I not know? Emo Shurjio's mind was a mess. The demons who died at my hands, were all destined to face this calamity. Swishaoduo said indifferently. Today, I've come to eliminate your calamity out of goodwill. How dare you be rude to me, Emo Shurjio? Emo Shurjio's mind was completely muddled. Eliminate calamity? Goodwill? That's right. Eliminate calamity. It's goodwill. Swishaoduo shouted. Emo Shurjio. Here. Emo Shurjio was famous for his lack of brain. He had been ordered around by his bosses countless times. So when he heard his name being shouted, he instinctively responded. Get out of the way. Yes. Get out of the way. Emo Shurjio immediately stood aside. Swishaoduo strode past him, his black and white eyes looking straight ahead. It wasn't until Swishaoduo had walked a few dozen steps away that Emo Shurjio suddenly felt that something was wrong. He scratched his head and suddenly flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a whoosh he took out his mace. Who are you? I am the heavenly Tao. Swishaoduo didn't finish his sentence. Suddenly, a furious voice came from the depths of the forest. Emo Shurjio. You idiot. Emo Shurjio looked in the direction of the voice, confused. He tightened his grip on his mace and said hesitantly, Can he really communicate with the heavenly Tao and lure you out? Bullshit. Communicate with the heavenly Tao, my ass. The voice was so angry that it was about to vomit blood. Stop him. Take him down. There was a whistling sound. Obviously, a large number of demon experts were rushing over. Hearing this, Emo Shurjio shivered and roared. Stop right there. Stop. How could Swishaoduo possibly stop? As soon as he walked past Emo Shurjio, he immediately moved at his highest speed, using the Tianyuan escape technique. He rushed out thousands of feet like a bolt of lightning, and continued to accelerate. How could Emo Shurjio not know that he had fallen into a trap? He was so angry that smoke rose from his head. He chased after him. Despicable and shameless. Stop right there. You. How do you know my name? Demonic clouds surged ahead. An angry voice cursed, trash. It was obviously not cursing Swishaoduo. Then an earth-shattering boom came from the front. The Thousand Souls Nightmare Hammer, that Swishaoduo had mustered all his strength, collided with the devil in front of him. Boom. The space shattered, and the shockwaves were clear and obvious. The demon race expert on the opposite side let out a muffled groan, and took 3 steps back. Swishaoduo also grunted and staggered back more than 10 steps. He was shocked. It was obvious that the other party was a Skysor realm expert. That kind of power was too obvious. However, he was different from the Skysor realm experts of the demon race. The previous 18 were all sent flying by Swishaoduo alone. But this one was much stronger. He should be an advanced Skysor realm expert, or at the peak. Swishaoduo was a little depressed and quickly came to a conclusion. No wonder when Sister Nian asked the 9 Heavens Pavilion for advice, they said that Skysors were different from Skysors. The difference was too big. An expert of this level was indeed extraordinary. As soon as they exchanged blows, Swishaoduo's unstoppable momentum was forcibly stopped. Although Swishaoduo suffered a setback for the first time, he didn't panic. While retreating, he took advantage of the opportunity to create a big whirlwind. The 2 hammers spun around twice with a strange roar, and the 20 or so demons who wanted to take advantage of the situation were beaten into a dazzling firework. The power of a mountain. At that moment, he truly felt that there was a complete and deep mountain in front of him. Even if he used all his strength to hammer, he could not shake it. The other party blocked it head-on. A gigantic mace collided violently with the 99 cat hammer. It could be said that this was the most extreme collision between heavy weapons. Thousands of sparks flew in all directions. It was a ghastly sight. Although Swishaoduo was not injured, his heart still trembled. That imposing aura that was like a majestic mountain just now almost made him feel depressed. Power, so this is power. When he swung his hammer at the other party, he felt like he was swinging his hammer at a mountain. This kind of feeling, when an ordinary person faced a mountain and wanted to destroy it, they would only feel depressed and powerless. Fortunately, when Zhuo felt this way, he had already swung his hammer with all his might. Moreover, this hammer strike was quite effective. It smashed the other party back. After he heaved a sigh of relief, he felt that this was all there was to it. This completely dispelled the depression and powerlessness in his heart. If the other party really stood there like a mountain and took this hammer strike, it would be a huge blow to the confidence that Zhuo had just built up. However, the other party could not do it. Fortunately, he could not do it. Zhuo subconsciously took a deep breath. After all, it was only now that he truly felt the terror of a skysword expert. Previously, when he fought against the 18 skyswords, Zhuo even had a feeling that he could already fight against a Dao integration stage expert. However, the sudden appearance of this skysword demon mercilessly shattered Zhuo's fantasy. Powerful, Zhuo became even more cautious. When he was at the origin core realm, he could already fight against a nascent soul transformation stage expert. When he reached the origin core realm, he could already fight against a soul transformation stage expert. When he reached the soul transformation stage, he could fight against a nascent soul transformation stage expert. Now that he had reached the nascent soul transformation stage expert, he could still win against the 18 skyswords. With his current strength, how could he feel fear before even fighting a skysword realm expert? How could it be normal for him to feel that he might not be a match for the skysword realm expert? The skysword demon expert opposite him had a huge body and a huge mace in his hand. At this moment it was still buzzing and trembling. His hand was trembling slightly, and the corner of his eyes kept twitching. His heart was shocked to the extreme. This little brat opposite him had such great strength. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.